In this ninja world, I'm the one in charge now. Uzumaki Naraku. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151. The first generation cells are really useful. Slug, I need you to inform me. Tsunade's shadow clone turned to the little slug on her shoulder and said, "There is no need to be so polite, Tsunade-sama. In this case, I will take my leave." With that said, the slug turned into a puff of smoke with a bang and returned to the Shigi Bone Forest. Then after Tsunade explained something to Naraku, she also turned into a puff of smoke and disappeared. Shigu Forest, it's really exciting. Naraku murmured softly in his mouth. A small island in the kingdom of water. A handsome man wearing a sky blue robe and long bangs was looking warily at the people surrounding him. "You are people from Kirigakure village, as expected. Were you still found?" The man murmured softly, and even though he was surrounded by everyone, he still had an expression of indifference on his face. "Hugeo, Kirigakure's rebellious ninja, the Six Tails Jinchuriki. It seems you are the one." Just then a hoarse voice came, and then a familiar figure stepped forward and showed his figure. "You are." It wasn't until this moment that Hugeo realized that he had recognized the wrong person. His expressionless face paused slightly, and then he looked at the other person with slightly wary eyes. "Haha, some things don't belong to you. You'd better return them obediently." The next moment, the man raised his hands and began to form seals quickly, and then shouted, "Wind escape, beast wave palm." An extremely familiar voice. If Naraku were here, he would be able to recognize this person's identity at a glance. It was Shimura Danzo who was killed by him. And with him were the Shimura clan and the Sarutobi clan who were brought out of the village by the third generation. Facing Danzo's sudden attack, Yugeo's expression changed slightly. He waved his right arm lightly, and a flute-like weapon appeared in his hand. Then he put the flute to his mouth, and countless bubbles popped out of the flute. Puff, puff, puff. These bubbles shattered directly when they came into contact with a wind escape released by Danzo. Fortunately, there were a large number of bubbles, and they could barely block Feng Dun's offensive. Haha, Kirigakure's bubble attack. The target is determined. The rest is up to you. Hiruzen, Danzo snid, and then stepped back, and those surrounding Yugeo also took a few steps back. An ominous premonition arose in Yugeo's heart. Earth escape. Earth Dragon Bullet. At this moment, a hoarse voice came from behind the crowd, and then the ground shook violently. A huge mud dragon rises from the ground. Boom, boom, boom. The mud dragon's mouth opened wide, and then mud bombs bounced out of its mouth and blasted towards Yugeo. Yugeo's pupils narrowed when he saw these mud bombs. Just when he was about to take action, the ground under his feet suddenly became loose and then started to flow like a river. Earth escape, a great river of earth flow. The river-like ground made you a little unsteady, and the next moment, all the mud bombs in the air bombarded him. Boom. But the next moment, a violent energy burst out from Yugeo's body, and a white tail sprang out from behind him, blasting all the mud bombs aside. Powerful energy fluctuations came from the tail covered with mucus. It's six-tailed rhinoceros, with his eyes fixed on the tail behind Yugeo. Danzo looked extremely excited at this time. Obviously, this time their target is the Six Tails Jinchuriki in front of them. Yugeo. No, it should be the Vulpix in Yugeo's body. Call out, call out, call out. Just when Yugeo used his tail to block the mud bomb attack, a series of sounds bursting through the air suddenly sounded. The dense shurikens visible to the naked eye tore through the air and stabbed Yugeo. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. The masked sensei shouted in his heart. Then he turned his head and glanced at Danzo on the side, and then rushed towards Yugeo in front of him, and there were several other people with him. Fire escape. Oh, fireball. Wind escape. A big breakthrough. The Sarutobi clan is good at fire escape, and the Shimura clan is good at wind escape. The two of them cooperated with each other to shoot a combined strike ninjutsu towards Yu-Gi-Oh! Large swaths of crimson flames rushed towards Yu-Gi-Oh! Together with the shuriken. Soon Yu-Gi-Oh!'s figure was directly overwhelmed by the attacks, while the third generation led the men to besiege Yu-Gi-Oh! Danzo also took action. He and several other people were seen standing in the four directions of southeast, northwest and northwest. The next moment, the four of them started to form seals at the same time. 4. Purple flame formation. The four people shouted at the same time, and then a transparent lavender barrier enveloped this area. The 4 purple flame formation is a powerful sealing barrier, similar to the 4 red flame formation, but its power is far inferior to the latter. However, it is still enough to trap a shadow level powerhouse with the 4 red flame formation. In order to successfully capture Vulpix this time, Danzo and the others had made full plans and brought all the power that he and the third could use here for this moment. Hiruzen, the rest is up to you. Danzo murmured in his heart. Point within the barrier, facing the bombardment of many attacks, Yu-Gi-Oh! Experienced another change at this time, and a more powerful energy burst out from his body. Point at this time, his body was completely covered in dark red energy, and 5 dark red tails stretched out from his back. Point Yu-Gi-Oh! Now looks like a real beast, but still barely retains his human form. Roar. A roar like a beast came from Yu-Gi-Oh!'s mouth, and then he kicked his feet on the ground, and his whole body rushed forward. At extremely fast speed, he arrived in front of someone in the blink of an eye. The arms covered with dark red energy were like the claws of a wild beast, and the claws clawed straight at the man in front of him. A flash of panic appeared in Sarutobi's eyes. He was a little nervous when facing such an opponent for the first time, and he had no time to react to Yu-Gi-Oh!'s attack. Just when the sharp claws were about to fall on him, an extremely thick iron rod came out from his back. Boom. The iron rod that rushed over at extremely high speed directly hit Yu-Gi-Oh!, who had transformed into a half-tailed beast, and the huge force directly knocked his body away. Swish. Then the third generation flashed and stood next to Sarutobi Kazu. Be careful. After saying these words, Sunday held an iron rod and launched a fierce offensive towards Yu-Gi-Oh! With his flexible body and the assistance of the monkey demon, Sunday was able to contain the other party by himself. Danzo outside the barrier also noticed this scene. Hiruzen, you really did not disappoint. A sneer appeared on Danzo's face. Danzo nodded secretly as he watched the 3 generations in the barrier becoming more and more courageous as they fought. The first generation cells are really useful. Chapter 152 Don 039 T let me down, Danzo-sama. On the island, just when Sunday and the others were busy capturing Vulpix, a tall white-haired figure came to the island. That is, Jiraiya, who had just arrived here, looked up and saw the familiar purple-red barrier. 4 purple flame formation. What on earth do you want to do? Jiraiya frowned and thought to himself. Then he hid his figure and quietly rushed there. What Jiraiya didn't know was that shortly after he left, a white figure emerged from the ground. It was Beizetsu, but this might just be a clone. The third Hokage of Konoha actually brought people to capture the 6 tails, and Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas, also rushed over. It's really interesting. She laughed twice, then dived underground. At the same time, in a hidden cave near Kirigakure village, Obito, who was closing his eyes to rest, suddenly opened his eyes. A cold chill emanated from the scarlet left eye. Haha, I'm really sorry for disturbing your practice. Beiju, who was shrouded in giant pitcher plants, emerged from the mountain and said with a hint of playfulness on his face, the third Hokage of Konoha actually led people to capture the Vulpix. Zetsu's tone seemed to reveal a hint of surprise, but he immediately changed the subject. There seems to be a figure of Danzo here. Aren't you going to check it out? Zu looked up at the man wearing a tiger-striped mask in front of him. There was a trace of hesitation in Obito's eyes, but he finally shook his head. Let them do it. It's still too early for us to capture the tailed beast now, and the heretic golem can only absorb tailed beasts from one tail. After saying this, Obito closed his eyes again and began to absorb the chakra around him. After the battle with Kakashi and Naraku, Obito has realized that his strength does not have much advantage at this time, so now he has to work hard to improve his strength. Feeling the strong breath of life coming from the left side of his body, Obito's eyes showed a trace of determination. Because half of his body has been transplanted with first generation cells, Obito can freely use the Manjaki Sharingan without worrying about the risk of blindness. However, this is only part of the effect of the first generation cells, perhaps because of inner resistance, or because of overconfidence in the virtualization ability brought by one's Sharingan point. Obito has never taken the initiative to develop the abilities of the first generation cells, and he even deliberately prevented the union of the right body and the left body point. But now, Obito has changed his mind. After seeing the strength of Naraku and Kakashi, he realized the lack of virtual energy point, and he knew very well the ability of Kakashi's left eye. If one person cooperated with Kakashi, Obito would not even be sure that he could defeat the opponent. This is what Obito doesn't want to see. For the plan in his heart and to achieve true peace, he must become stronger. Obito closed his eyes and began to actively pull the first generation cells on his body, allowing them to slowly engulf the right side of his body. That's right, it's phagocytosis. It has powerful recovery capabilities and can use wood release. While the first generation cells have these abilities, they also have a characteristic, which is domineering phagocytosis. The first generation cells are like real living creatures. When they encounter other cells, they will brutally engulf them. Of course, the recipient can also prevent this behavior by concentrating the primary cell somewhere in the body. Use a special sealing technique to allow it to move only in that part of the body, thus ensuring that other cells in the body are not devoured. Both Obito now and Danzo during his lifetime used this method to suppress the first generation cells, but now Obito decided to break the seal, and he decided to completely accept the first generation cells. Obito has a feeling that after he completely controls the first generation cells, his body will undergo qualitative changes and his strength will be greatly improved. In fact, Obito originally returned to Kirigakure village to take Yagura to Konoha village to completely eliminate Kakashi and the others. However, he changed his mind after coming to Kirigakure village. He had an illusion that even if he took Yagura to Konoha now, there was a high possibility that they would be defeated miserably. Although he didn't want to admit it, if he didn't hand over that person, Obito would really not be able to defeat Konoha at this time. But it was precisely because of this that Obito came up with the idea of improving his strength. Not far away, Beisetsu felt the familiar power of Obito, and a cold smile appeared on his face. It's such a familiar scene, just like Madara-sama back then. Obito, I'm really looking forward to where you can go. With this thought in his mind, his body slowly sneaked into the mountain and left here. In a hidden cave, capture Vulpix. Shimura Danzo, you are really an interesting person. After listening to Beiju's report, Heniju's mouth slightly raised, revealing a cold smile. If I remember correctly, Danzo seemed to have been killed by Naraku Uzumaki. It seems that Konoha is not peaceful now. Black Zetsu thought secretly in his heart, and finally gave up the idea of stopping Danzo and the others. In fact, to him, it doesn't matter where the tailed beast is now, because no matter who controls the tailed beast, there is only one result in the end, and that is death. When their plan really begins, that's when those Jinchuriki die. As for Kyuubi and Uzumaki Naraku, Black Zetsu already has a plan in mind. Danzo's actions undoubtedly gave them a great help. Invisibly. The enemy of the enemy is the friend. He is now ready to make good use of this friend. Don't let me down, Elder Danzo. I'm really looking forward to what step you can take on the small island inside the four purple flame formation. At this time, the third generation was breathing heavily, with beads of sweat dripping from his old face. Although the third generation is very strong, as he grows older, his strength has begun to decline. Otherwise he would never have chosen to abdicate in the first place. He was helpless when he chose to abdicate to Tsunade. He himself was seriously injured by Naraku. If Jiraiya hadn't arrived, he might be as dead as Danzo now. However, even though his strength declined, the third generation still suppressed Vulpix by himself. The third generation looked up at the huge creature in front of him. It was a huge slug-like creature, but compared to a normal slug, it had 6 more giant tails covered with mucus. 6-tailed rhinoceros. That's right, Yu-Gi-Oh has completely transformed into a tailed beast at this time. Chapter 153, the most successful experimental subject. Sandaime Sama, the patriarch, so strong, within the barrier, the Sarutobi and Shimura clans exclaimed at the same time point at this time. In their eyes, the third generation who could suppress Vulpix with one person's power was like a god of war. However, some of these people had unusual expressions, and they were all old and ninjas. Lord Patriarch? Sarutobi's face was complicated. Today's scene reminded him of that night many years ago. That night the Three Tails attacked the village and the Nine Tails were released. That night, he had witnessed the battle between the third generation and the Three Tails. Although the third generation tried his best at that time, he could only barely intercept the Three Tails. It was nothing like it is now. One person can suppress Vulpix. As we all know, in the ninja world, except for some special groups of people, the strength of normal people will decline with age. The third generation is an obvious example, but the current situation is completely different. Today's third generation strength is infinitely approaching his peak period. I hope the clan leader can bring our Sarutobi clan to the top again. Sarutobi Tsukiguro said secretly in his heart. The next moment, his eyes narrowed, and then with a bang, a huge scroll appeared in his hand. Everyone, get ready to seal Vulpix. At this moment, Sandai's hoarse voice reached everyone's ears, and then he held the iron rod transformed from the monkey demon and bullied Vulpix again. Boom, boom, boom. After violent noises, Vulpix's huge body was covered with scars. What, then? The third generation infinitely increased the iron rod in his hand, and pressed it directly on the huge body of Vulpix, temporarily restraining the opponent's movements. Then the third generation infinitely increased the iron rod in his hand, and pressed it directly on the huge body of Vulpix, temporarily restraining the opponent's movements. Several figures holding huge scrolls appeared around Vulpix. Sealing technique. Several people shouted loudly at the same time, and then the paper engraved with black spells was wrapped around Vulpix's huge body. Looks like he's going to die. After these words flashed through Yu-Gi-Oh's mind, he immediately lost consciousness. When he woke up, he had arrived in a Pure Land point in reality. At this time, the third generation had completely extracted the Vulpix from Yu-Gi-Oh's body and completely sealed it. Looking at the Vulpix bound by the black paper in front of him, Sandai's eyes flashed with solemnity, and he knew that now was the real beginning point. Then he turned his head and looked behind him, where there was a thin figure wearing a mask. If you just look at the figure, you will find that this person is very similar to him. It is Sarutobi Ikumi. Whether it is Danzo or the third generation, the reason why they came here with great fanfare to capture the Six Tails this time is to make Sarutobi Liming become the Six Tails Jinchuriki. After Danzo was resurrected, this plan arose in his mind. Tailed beasts. Each tailed beast has extremely powerful power. In previous wars, tailed beasts were used as city-destroying weapons. Danzo had this idea in the past, otherwise he wouldn't have tried every means to control Naruto or Kushina. However, after he saw Kushina waking up from serious injuries, he began to slowly change this idea in his heart. Instead of controlling the Jinchuriki, it is better to become the Jinchuriki yourself. The powerful recovery ability and the massive amount of chakra are extremely powerful energy. As for worrying about the tailed beast going berserk, it was nothing to Danzo, who had a large number of first generation cells in his hands. If Danzo had not died, he might have absorbed the tailed beast by himself and become a Jinchuriki, but now that he is the reincarnated body of the Dirty Land, he will definitely not be able to become a container for the tailed beast. But now he has a better candidate. Sarutobi Liming was the product of an unexpected move by the third generation, and was also the most successful experimental subject of the year. Go ahead, Liming, you will definitely become a blockbuster in the future. Looking at Sarutobi Liming's back inside the barrier, his eyes were filled with a trace of madness. Within the barrier, Sarutobi Liming, who received the signal from the third, stepped forward. When he reached the sealed Vulpix, he slowly stopped. Sarutobi Liming stretched out a hand and put it on the Vulpix, who was wrapped in the sealing technique. The next moment, a violent energy burst out from his hand. It was a ball of dark red energy, and a powerful momentum emanated from this ball of energy. It's this Kyuubi's. No, not only the Nine Tails, but also the Three Tails. Sanday's expression changed when he felt this energy aura. He felt several familiar auras on this massive energy point. The most obvious one is the energy in Kyuubi. Did this come from Naruto? The third generation looked back at Danzo and sighed in his heart. The third generation guessed correctly. The chakra of the nine tails in Sarutobi Ikumina was indeed extracted from Naruto. Not only the nine tails, but also the chakra of the one tails that Danzo extracted in Tsunagakure village, and the chakra of the three tails that he exchanged from Black Zetsu. At this time, part of the chakra of the 1, 3, and 9-tailed beasts was in Sarutobi Ikume's body point. If it were an ordinary person, if the chakra of these 3-tailed beasts were injected at the same time, he might not be able to hold on long ago and completely go berserk point, but Sarutobi Ikume did not. Not only that, he also mixed all the chakras of the 3-tailed beasts together, and finally completely controlled them. The dark red energy in his hand now is the product of the chakra of the 3-tailed beasts mixed together on the field. The moment the palm wrapped in dark red energy came into contact with Vulpix's body, the latter's huge body began to tremble. The papers with black spells engraved on him suddenly began to fall apart. Swish. At this moment, the third generation appeared next to Sarutobi Ikume in a flash, and a powerful aura burst out from him. If he waits for the Vulpix riot, he will definitely respond as soon as possible. Sarutobi Liming, who noticed Sanday's movement, raised the corners of his mouth slightly and said, "You are worrying too much." The next moment, a violent energy came out of his right hand, like a strong suction force. Gudu. Gudu. The huge body of Vulpix began to change continuously, and then one after another energy surged towards Sarutobi Yiming's arm. Not long afterward, the Vulpix disappeared, replaced by multiple powerful energies appearing on Sarutobi Yiming. As expected, the adult cells were transplanted. Sanday, who felt a familiar aura, murmured softly, and then to quickly form seals with him began hands. Gossip. Seal. A low shout came from his mouth, and then dark blue chakra appeared between the 5 fingers of the third generation's hand. Without hesitation, he directly slapped his hand on the belly button of Sarutobi Yiming. Laugh. A burst of white smoke rose, and then a black swirl-like pattern appeared on Sarutobi Ikume's navel. Chapter 154 Tsunade's decision. Outside the barrier, in a slightly hidden corner, the hidden Jiraiya quietly watched everything happening in the barrier. After seeing Sarutobi Yiming successfully become the 6 tails Jinchuriki, a look of shock appeared in his eyes. It was so smooth, so easy. This is how Jiraiya felt at this time. You must know that, even when Kakashi became a Jinchuriki, it would not have been so smooth if it weren't for the presence of Naraku and Kushina, who were proficient in sealing techniques. But now the third generation and the others have easily sealed the 6 tails into Sarutobi Ikume's body. Although the 6 tails strength is at the bottom among the tailed beasts, it won't be so overwhelming. Looking at Sarutobi Yiming, who had successfully become the 6-tailed Jinchuriki, Jiraiya felt for the first time something unusual about this young man who looked very similar to the third generation. Whether it was the ease of inhaling the 6 tails into his body, or the previous burst of tailed beast chakra, these all proved that Sarutobi Yiming's strength was not simple. Not only him, Jiraiya also turned his attention to the third generation. As the third generation's disciple, Jiraiya knew very well what his teacher's current strength was. A few years ago, he found it extremely difficult to face the 3 tails alone, but now he can suppress the Vulpix that has completely transformed into a tailed beast. There must be some secret hidden in it. Jiraiya's mind became increasingly heavy, and he was worried about the current situation in Konoha. The third generation, who has greatly increased in strength, the unusual Sarutobi Ikume, and the immortal Danzo. Each of these 3 people has extremely powerful combat power. Naraku, Kakashi, himself, Tsunade, Shisu. If these people are all standing on the same front, then Konoha today will definitely stand proudly above the 5 major ninja villages. It is a pity that it is impossible for the third generation and the others to stand on the same side as Tsunade and the others. They openly went to capture tailed beasts from other ninja villages. Even though they were traitors to the ninja, what the third generation and the others did still violated the alliance treaty between the 5 nations. Jiraiya raised his head and glanced at the third generation in the barrier, and his complicated eyes instantly became firm. Teacher, now you have betrayed the will of fire. Then Jiraiya turned around and prepared to leave, but the next moment, two masked figures appeared and blocked his way. Sure enough, we were discovered after all. Jiraiya was not surprised by the appearance of the first two people. In fact, he could feel that his whereabouts had long been exposed. It was just that the third generation and the others were busy capturing the tailed beasts and could not get out for the time being. Now that we are here, why should we leave in a hurry? Danzo's voice came from behind. Jiraiya turned to look at the young man with black hair in front of him. This was the first time he saw Danzo reincarnated in the dirt, or a Chimaru. You really know how to cause trouble. Looking at Danzo resurrected from the dead, Jiraiya thought of that very familiar figure. Ugh. With a helpless smile, he turned his head and looked in another direction, where a thin figure was slowly approaching. Looking at the visitor, a strange emotion arose in his heart, but he hid it well. There was no negotiation or any words, and the two sides fell into a brief silence. The thin figure raised his hand slightly, then turned around and left. The remaining people hesitated slightly and followed the third generation. Danzo also looked at Jiraiya coldly and left here. After a while, the group of them cleaned up the battlefield and left. As for Yugeo's body, it was also sealed with a scroll and taken away. This can be done to disguise the disappearance of the Six Tails Jinchuriki. Although it won't be hidden for a long time, at least it won't be discovered in a short period of time. After everyone left, Jiraiya murmured in his mouth with a complicated expression. If the true body is here. Boom. As he spoke, his body turned into a puff of smoke and disappeared. In a relatively hidden position not far away, Jiraiya, who was closing his eyes to rest, suddenly opened his eyes. After receiving the news from the shadow clone, a look of shock appeared in his eyes. He then set off back to the village. One day later, Hokage's office. At this time, Tsunade was sitting on her desk, her eyebrows furrowed, and a slightly gloomy expression appeared on her face. Tsunade. Next to her was Jiraiya, who had just returned to the village. He told Tsunade everything the three generations had done. From Tsunade's perspective, the third generation and the others went behind the backs of everyone in the village to capture tailed beasts from other ninja villages. This incident would definitely turn them all into traitorous ninjas. Tsunade had a flash of tangle in her heart. If others had done such a thing, Tsunade might directly order them to be expelled from the village, as they would be regarded as traitors. But the third generation cannot. If it is announced that the third generation has become a rebellious ninja in the village, then Konoha will definitely become the laughing stock of the entire ninja world. The Hokage has become a rebellious ninja in the village. When word of this spreads out, it will not only make other countries laugh, but also make the villagers of Konoha feel uneasy. This was not what Tsunade wanted to see. But it was impossible for her to swallow this breath easily. Tsunade raised her head and looked at the silver figure in front of her. After a slight hesitation, she spoke slowly. Invite Anbu, Captain Uchiha, Shizu and Konoha-Joun in matte armor over here. After hearing this, Jiraiya's face changed slightly, and he wanted to say something, but in the end he remained silent. Looking at the gloomy woman beside him, a trace of distress flashed in Jiraiya's eyes. I will not forgive anyone who wants to harm the village and you. Jiraiya secretly thought to himself, and his eyes became firm. After a while, Shizu, dressed as an Anbu in green training clothes, stood respectfully in front of Tsunade. Tsunade's eyes kept looking around Kakashi and the three of them. There is no doubt that Kakashi, Shizu, and Gai are the strongest jonin in Konoha besides Naraku. Especially Kakashi. He has mastered the Flying Thunder God and solved the problem of lack of blue not long ago. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is the strongest in Konoha now. Even Jiraiya didn't dare to say that he could beat Kakashi without turning on Sage Mode. As for Shizu and Kei, they are both equally powerful. But when Tsunade's eyes fell on Kei, there was a flash of hesitation. It's not that she doesn't trust Kei's strength, it's that Kei has never been in Anbu after all. As a Jounin of Konoha, he performed some superficial tasks, so Kei didn't know anything about the third generation and Danzo. If Kei were to directly attack the third generation and the others now, Tsunade didn't know if he would be resistant. Chapter 155. I hope everyone can come back safely. Hokage's office. At this time, Kakashi noticed Tsunade's hesitant gaze on Kei, and he quickly thought of Tsunade's worries. In this regard, he just wanted to say that Tsunade was worrying too much. Although Kei seemed to be very neurotic, it was precisely because of this personality that he could more clearly judge the good and bad of people. Having spent a long time with Naraku, he had long understood the true character of the third generation. He gave Tsunade a firm look, indicating that Kei could be completely trusted. It is good. Tsunade, who noticed Kakashi's eyes, thought secretly in her heart, and then she opened her mouth and gave the order. The dead Danzo was resurrected by Orochimaru using a forbidden technique in the office, except for Kei, who was unaware, and his expression changed slightly after hearing this. Everyone else was silent. Obviously both Kakashi and Shizu had known about this for a long time. Not to mention Jiraiya. He had only seen the other person in person a day ago. The third generation of Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, was bewitched by Danzo Shimura. Under the name of Konoha Village, they secretly attacked and captured the Six Tails of Karigakure Village. After hearing this, even Shizu had a surprised expression on his face. He only knew that the third generation would most likely collude with Danzo, but he did not expect that they would capture tailed beasts from other villages. As for Kei, he remained silent after hearing this, but his face became heavier. Now, I give orders in the name of Hokage. Hatake Kakashi, Metke, Uchiha Shizu. Tsunade read out the names of the 3 people one by one. I order the 3 of you to set off now. Intercept Danzo's party, who is about to return to the village, deal with Danzo Shimura, and escort the third generation back to the village safely. As for the other personnel, kill them on the spot. While speaking, Tsunade stood up. A murderous look appeared on her cold face, and an aura unique to a shadow-level powerhouse burst out. Yes. The 3 Kakashi bowed and responded. An hour later, 3 familiar figures appeared at the door of Konoha Village. With silver hair, a black mask, and a slender figure. He looks very cold. The other person was dressed in green clothing, with the dark green vest of a Konoha Jonin on his upper body. As for the last person, it can be seen from the barb-like hairstyle that he is undoubtedly Shizu. Maybe it was because the mission this time was more important, or because of something else. Even Kei, who had a cheerful personality, didn't say much this time. After meeting, Kakashi led the 2 of them in one direction. In order to ensure the safety of the 2 of them, Kakashi left the mark of the Flying Thunder God on Kei and Shizu respectively on the road. Hokage's office. Tsunade stood by the window, looking out the window, and at the same time, there was a slug lying on her shoulder. Tsunade-sama, there is news from the border of the Land of Fire. The third generation and the others have appeared there. A gentle female voice came from the slug's mouth. It's the border of the country of fire. If that's the case, let's set the battlefield there. Tsunade murmured softly. Boom. Boom. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Please come in. Tsunade's voice came. Hokage-sama, are you looking for me? Luchiu, who opened the door and walked in, was a little strange. Just this morning, he had just reported the matter to Tsunade, so why did you suddenly call him over now? I have to leave the village for something. If nothing happens, I can come back tomorrow. Tsunade's words made Shikaku instantly nervous. Hokage-sama, this. Shikaku felt a little dizzy when he heard this, just when he was about to say something. Please help me handle today's affairs for the time being. Tsunade's voice sounded again, and then she left here in a flash. The deer was not given any time to react. Just after Tsunade left, a tall figure appeared in front of Shikaku with long white hair and red paint on his face. It was Jiraiya. Jiraiya-sama, you are here too. That's great. Please go and persuade Hokage-sama. Boom. Thank you for your hard work, Chief Nara. Before Shikaku could finish what he said, Jiraiya patted him on the shoulder, said the next word, and left the place in a flash. Forehead. Jiu was left at a loss in the office with a look of helplessness. Tsunade-sama, this is going to. At this moment, Shizune, dressed in black, walked in holding a large stack of documents. She showed a surprised expression after seeing Shikaku. Documents to be processed today. The border of the far country. Because there were a large number of people, and considering that Sarutobi Ichimoi had just become the Six Tails Jinchuriki, they stayed near the island for half a day, and it was only now that the Sandaime and his party arrived here. Not long after crossing the border, Sandai seemed to sense something, and a look of uneasiness appeared on his wrinkled face. Point in his sight, another small slug hidden among the leaves appeared. Point. If it were an ordinary person, they might simply ignore it as an ordinary slug, but the third generation would not. Point as Tsunade's teacher, he knew the appearance and abilities of slugs very well. It was obvious that this slug was sent by Tsunade to collect information. The third generation knew that their whereabouts had been exposed and turned to look at Danzo standing aside. Coincidentally, Danzo just turned his head to look at him at this time. After the two looked at each other, they both saw something in each other's eyes without saying anything. The group of them continued to rush towards the direction of Konoha village. It's in that direction, Kakashi murmured in his heart, and then hurried in one direction according to the guidance of the slug on his shoulder inside the damning mansion of the Land of Fire. The daimyo who was dealing with government affairs suddenly received news that the 5th Hokage of Konoha village was now coming to visit him. This news surprised the daimyo. Unlike the third generation who visited him once a year, he had only seen Tsunade once in so many years before he took office. It's because the daimyo thought of the third generation who had just returned to the village some time ago, and a strange expression appeared on his face. Oh, I really don't know when we will have real peace in the land of the Thousand Hands clan. Mom, when will uncle come back? Her blonde hair shone golden in the sun, and 6 long beards grew on her young face. It was Naruto, but he looked depressed at this time, and his blue eyes had lost their original luster. Kushina reached out and rubbed Naruto's head twice and said softly, as long as Naruto obeys, uncle, he will be back soon. As she said that, Kushina turned to look at the location outside the village. I hope everyone can come back safely. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156. Congratulations, you have become a stepping stone for me. Izumi Sarutobi. A location within the country of fire, not far from the border. Several figures were rushing forward at great speed, the leader of which was a thin young man. It was Sarutobi Yiming who, relying on the powerful first generation cells in his body and the powerful Bagua seal, quickly suppressed the 6 tails in his body. Now he can even use part of its energy. Suddenly, Sarutobi Yiming seemed to sense something. He suddenly raised his head and looked forward, only to see 3 figures in front of them approaching them at high speed. Before he could make any move, Sandai and Danzo were already standing beside him. At this time, the 3 figures in front also revealed their figures, and they were none other than the 3 Kakashis. Kakashi, what are you trying to do? The third generation's hoarse voice came out, and he shouted towards the 3 of them with a questioning tone. Kakashi glanced at the third generation with cold eyes and said nothing. For the third generation, Kakashi's heart was filled with disappointment and a trace of hatred. In fact, Kakashi knew very early on that the death of his father, Konoha White Fang, was not that simple at all. It is inseparable from the 2 people in front of me. Looking at the 3 people who were silent, Sandai's face gradually became ugly. No matter how you say it, he is still the 3rd Hokage of the village. Even if he abdicates, he should be respected by everyone. But now the ignorance of Kakashi and others means that they completely ignore him. Swish. Just when he was about to make a move, a figure had already rushed over 1 step ahead of him. It was Sarutobi Yiming. At this moment, he was seen holding a silver long knife and rushing straight towards Kakashi in front. Seeing this, Shisu next to Kakashi showed his scarlet eyes for an instant. Just when he was about to step forward to fight, Kakashi reached out and patted him on the shoulder. Leave him to me, and you go and stop the 3rd generation, Kakashi said in a deep voice. Danzo is left to you. Be careful, he has immortality. After saying that, he disappeared in a flash, and when he reappeared, he was already standing in front of Sarutobi Yiming. Looking at Kakashi in front of him, Sarutobi Yiming looked excited. The age difference between the 2 is not much, but their life trajectory is a completely different. Compared to Kakashi, who became famous at a young age, Sarutobi Yiming, who has lived in darkness since childhood, feels very pitiful. He had always wanted to step out of Danzo's shadow, and let everyone know him. However, having been controlled by Danzo since he was a child, he had no chance or courage to take that step. Even because of Danzo's sudden death, he almost lost his life along with him. Fortunately, everything is developing in a good direction. Danzo's resurrection made him appear in front of the world, and also gave him powerful power. What Sarutobi Yiming wants now is fame. He wants everyone to know his name. Defeating Kakashi in front of him is undoubtedly the best shortcut. Not to mention Konoha village, but also the entire ninja world. Among the rising stars in recent years, Kakashi is the most famous. The man who defeated the 4th Kazekage when he was less than 20 years old. Kakashi's name has already been circulated among the 5 great ninja villages for Naraku's defeat of the 4th Raikage. Thanks to the manipulation of both Kumogakure and Konoha, very few people knew about it. So in terms of fame, Kakashi is more famous now. So at this time, what Sarutobi Yiming was thinking about was to become famous in one battle point. He was going to defeat Konoha's most famous genius here today, Kakashi. Hatake, congratulations, you have become a stepping stone for me, Ichili Sarutobi. With this thought in his mind, Sarutobi Yiming's eyes showed a hint of excitement, and then a hot energy burst out from his body, and red flames instantly wrapped around the silver sword in his hand. The next moment, he was holding a flaming sword and struck directly at Kakashi in front of him. A trace of red flashed through his exposed right eye. Facing the speeding flaming sword, Kakashi didn't seem to notice it, and let the sword strike towards him. Noisy. Suddenly, an arc of electricity flashed at Kakashi's fingertips, and a shocking scene appeared the next moment. Fingertips. Kakashi actually used 2 fingers to clamp the blade that was glowing with red flames. You can see blue arcs flashing on his fingertips. How can this be? Seeing this scene, Sarutobi Yiming opened his eyes wide and couldn't believe that his attack was blocked by Kakashi like this. Boom. However, Kakashi didn't give him much time to be shocked at this time. He quickly kicked out his right leg, and a fierce flying kick directly kicked Sarutobi Yiming's body more than 10 meters away. Brush. At the same time, 2 figures passed through Kakashi on both sides. It was Shisu and Kei. I saw Shisu with scarlet eyes holding a sword and attacking the 3rd generation. The crimson flame ignited on the blade, which was the Uchiha sword technique. It was also an attack that used fire attribute chakra combined with sword skills, but in the hands of Shisu and Sarutobi Yiming, it was a completely different existence. Come out, ape demon. In this situation, Sandai did not continue to deceive himself. After summoning the monkey demon, he held the iron rod transformed from the monkey demon and fought with Shisu. Ruai. Stick. Strong wind. A low shout came from the 3rd generation's mouth, and he saw the iron rod in his hand starting to rotate at high speed, and the invisible wind attribute chakra condensed on the iron rod. The next moment, a violent gust of wind blew violently towards Shisu in front of him. Facing the attack of the 3rd generation, a trace of caution flashed in Shisu's eyes, and he vaguely felt that there was a powerful energy contained in the 3rd generation's body. Swish. Shisu used the teleportation technique to dodge the attack of the 3rd generation, Konoha's Great Whirlwind. Kei, on the other side, had already locked hands with Danzo, and Kei's legs were whipped towards Danzo like steel whips. Damn it, Danzo cursed secretly in his heart, because the host body that Orochimaru used for him when Guto was reincarnated was not strong, so his strength could not be used at all. In other words, except for having unlimited chakra and immortality, he is not much different from an ordinary Jounin. At best, he is just a little more sinister than the average person. Facing Kei's fierce attack, Danzo, who had no time to parry, could only cross his arms across his chest. Boom. But the next moment, a huge force appeared on his arms, and then his body flew backwards at high speed. Kei, who knocked Danzo away with one kick, did not stop his offensive. He kicked on the ground with one foot. With a sudden force, his body turned into a green shadow and launched another attack on Danzo. Lord Danzo. The people guarding him screamed in surprise. Shimuratsu was holding a sharp blade and was about to attack Kei in a flash, but the next moment a silver-haired figure appeared in front of him. Chapter 157. Let's make a quick decision. Lord 3. Boom. On the field, Kakashi kicked away Shimuratsu, who was trying to attack K in front. ZHI. ZHI. Then a light blue electric arc appeared on Kakashi's body, and then he held a silver short blade. His body surged at extremely high speed and began to attack the remaining people. Boom, boom, boom. Kakashi, who is now a shadow level player, faces these people like chopping melons and vegetables. To put it bluntly, among all the people on the Sandaime side, except for the Sandaime, Danzo, and Sarutobi Ikumi, who became the Jinchuriki, no one could block Kakashi's attack. I saw a blue figure flashing across the field, and in just a moment, several people fell to the ground. Although Tsunade issued an order to kill all these people, Kakashi only made them temporarily lose their fighting ability out of friendship with the same village, and did not kill them. Aha. Just then a roar came from not far away, just when Kakashi was about to turn his head and look over. Boom, a sound ripped through the air, and the next moment a figure wrapped in dark red energy appeared in Kakashi's sight. The person who came was none other than Sarutobi Ikumi, who had been kicked away by Kakashi just now. He had an angry look on his face and uncontrollable murderous intent in his eyes. Three tails formed of dark red energy appeared behind him. This is the breath of the six-tailed rhinoceros. Haha, Kakashi, it seems you are about to meet a strong opponent, a sneer sounded in Kakashi's mind. Kakashi remained silent in this regard, without any expression. My opponent may be able to do it in the future, but he can't do it now. Call out. Kakashi murmured in his heart, kicking his feet on the ground, and his whole body rushed forward like a thunder shadow. Crack, crack. Dark blue arcs of electricity surrounded him, and a violent aura came from Kakashi. Even Sarutobi Ikumi, who transformed into a half-tailed beast, could not suppress Kakashi in terms of aura. Boom. The violent thunder attribute energy and the powerful Vulpix chakra collided fiercely. Centered on the two of them, the surrounding air fluctuated like a tide. Boom. The next moment, as expected, a dark red figure flew backwards at high speed again. If he wasn't worried that killing him directly would make Vulpix disappear, Kakashi might have killed him. No matter how you look at it, his strength is crushing to Sarutobi Ikumi, even if the opponent uses the tailed beast chakra. Not only was the situation one-sided on his side, K, who was fighting Danzo, also had the upper hand at this time. If it were Danzo in his heyday, K might still feel a little troublesome, but now, Danzo's strength is not enough to pose a threat to him. He had completely suppressed Danzo by just opening the 3 gates. Even if the opponent was immortal, K was not afraid at all. Although he is somewhat exhausted when the 3 gates are open, it is not very big. He can even play for a whole day in this state. Among the 3 of them, only Shisu was passive at this time. Fire. Escape. The art of heroic flames. At this time, the 3rd generation quickly formed seals with his hands, opened his mouth and spit out a ball of crimson flames. The crimson flames continued to condense, and then turned into a pillar of flame, and rushed towards Shisu in front of him. Shisu's face was heavy, and he felt a powerful energy above the flames. He is worthy of being called a ninja professor, Shisu thought to himself. However, he did not retreat or choose to dodge. It was just a fire escape ninjutsu. The Uchiha clan is best at fire escape ninjutsu. Fire escape, the art of dragon fire. Zishu, who formed a yin seal with one hand, let out a low shout, then opened his mouth and spit out a ball of red flames, and then the flames turned into a flame dragon, and rushed forward. Boom. The 2 flames collided with each other, and the intense high temperature made the surrounding air hot. Swish. At this moment, the 3rd generation holding an iron rod suddenly appeared in front of Zishu. The iron rod in his hand came down from above and struck hard at Zishu. His scarlet eyes shone with mysterious light, and Shisu, who had long been aware of the 3rd generation's actions, reacted quickly. Red flames rose up and condensed on the sword in his hand. Then Shisu swung the sword fiercely and collided head-on with the iron rod. Clang. There was a clear sound of metal collision, and at this time Shisu felt a huge force from the blade to his arm. Earth escape, Earth Dragon Bullet. At this moment, a hoarse voice came from behind Zishu, and a thin figure appeared behind him. Rumble. The next moment, the ground shook violently, and a huge mud dragon was seen rising from the ground. The mouth of the mud dragon opened wide, and mud bombs were violently blasted towards Zishu. Shadow clone. Could it be just now? Zishu's expression changed when he felt the movement behind him. Although his strength is not weak, there is still a gap compared with the third generation who has rich combat experience and strong strength. The figure that appeared behind Shisu at this time was the shadow clone that the Sane took the opportunity to separate when the two flames collided just now, just for this moment. Although the third generation seemed to have the upper hand. At this time, he did not dare to relax at all, and his eyes fell on Shisu's scarlet eyes from time to time. Even he was very afraid of Shisu's ultimate illusion that could change their will. Boom, boom, boom. On the field, several mud bombs directly bombarded the area where Shisu was, and the huge impact caused a burst of smoke. Fire escape, fire dragon flame bullet. At this moment, the third generation of the main body, who was constantly retreating, quickly formed seals with his hands and then let out a low drink. Deep red flames like lava spit out from his mouth, and then the flames turned into a huge firebomb with a diameter of more than 3 meters and blasted into the smoke. Boom. Firebombs bombarded the smoke, but the expected explosion did not come. In the sight of the third generation, a group of green light appeared, and the fire bullet was blocked by that light. Then the green light rose sharply, and a green skeleton with only the upper body appeared in front of Sande's eyes. This is Susanoo. Looking at the tall green figure in front of him, Sande remembered the taller golden figure 3 years ago, and the red-haired figure who made a deep impression on him. At this time, Shisu's eyes were scarlet, and a trace of blood and tears dripped from his right eye. The 3 black megatoma in his right eye had disappeared, replaced by a black 4-cornered windmill pattern. The left eye still maintains the form of 3 megatoma. Let us fight quickly, third generation Sama. Chapter 158. Danzo feels such a pity. I didn't expect you could do this with just one main Gekkai Sharingan. Looking at Shisu with Susanoo in one eye in front of him, a flash of shock flashed in the third generation's eyes, but then it was replaced by a killing intent. Uchiha is indeed a clan that deserves to be destroyed. A violent momentum burst out from the third generation, and all the strength of the shadow level powerhouse exploded. At this moment, the third generation was like a sleeping lion opening its eyes. Swish. The shadow clone that was originally behind Shisu stood next to the third generation. Earth. Escape. Earth Dragon Bullet. Fire. Escape. Fire Dragon Bullet. The third generation's body and shadow clone began to form seals at the same time. Then the ground shook, and a mud dragon broke out of the ground again, and then a huge flame bomb bombarded the mud dragon. Boom. Earth Dragon Flame style. The earth dragon attached to the flame opened its mouth and sprayed out a fierce flame. The flame was like a compressed water gun, carrying a strong impact and rushing towards the green skeleton in front of it. Seeing this, Shisu's pupils shrank slightly, then he kicked his feet on the ground, and his whole body turned into a shadow and moved quickly. The green Susanoo that enveloped him shrank rapidly, and in the end only 2 rows of rib-like skeletons protected Shisu's body. Although Susanoo's defense is very strong, using it for a long time will consume a lot of eye power, and because of its huge size, its movement speed will also slow down a lot, making it easy to become a living target. Shisu was obviously aware of this. Aha, aha, aha. As Shisu moved quickly, multiple figures of him appeared on the field. These figures were like his clones, making it difficult to see the reality clearly. This is the origin of Shunshin Shisu. With Shisu's special body technique, even people with special eye skills cannot easily see through the difference between the clone and the entity. The flame sprayed by the earth dragon fell among the clones, but the expected collision was not seen. It can be seen that the crimson flames went straight through the figures. The one hit by the flames was just Shisu's clone. The next moment, all the clones were wrapped in green ribs, and they all rushed towards the third generation in front. Call out. Faced with the impact of many clones, the third generation reacted quickly, hitting out a shuriken, and the next moment his hands began to form seals quickly. Shuriken. Shadow clone jutsu. 1. Becomes 2. 2 becomes 4. 4. In an instant, Hundreds of shurikens appeared in front of the third generation, and these shurikens directly locked all of Shizu's clones. Call out, call out, call out. Sounds of breaking through the air sounded, and all the shurikens tore through the air and rushed towards Shizu and his clones at the same time. The third generation was highly focused, with a pair of sharp eyes on his slightly older face. Looking around, the third generation was carefully observing the many clones of Shizu in front of him, trying to find the real body of Shizu inside. Call out, call out. Most of the shurikens penetrated Shizu's body, which meant that they were only hitting clones. Clang. At this moment, an unusual sound appeared. The third generation's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard the sound, and he immediately turned his head to look towards the source of the sound. At the same time, the iron rod appeared in his hand again. Ruai Vajra Rod. A low shout came from Sanday's mouth, and the next moment, the iron rod in his hand began to rapidly extend and push forward, as expected of the third generation. This move alone obviously cannot deal with you. Looking at the extending iron rod in front of him, a sharp light flashed in Zisu's eyes. Boom. At this moment, a loud noise sounded on the field, and Shizu, who was wrapped in green ribs, was retreating at high speed, with a thick iron rod pressing against his body in front of him. It was Shizu. Although Susan's defense was very strong, it could not stop the third generation's attack with just his ribs. Shizu obviously realized this the next moment. Powerful pupil power erupted from his right eye, the green light surrounding him swelled, and the skeleton of his back body was formed. Bang! The huge skeleton stretched out a bone arm and directly grasped the thick iron rod in its hand. The huge force came from the skeleton, directly preventing the iron rod from continuing to grow. Bloody tears flowed from Shizu's right eye again. With one force to defeat all methods, Shizu planned to fight directly with the third generation this time. Call. Skeleton Susanoo clenched the iron rod in his hand and swung it directly in the next moment. It was obvious that the third generation, who was a human body, could not compare with the skeleton Susanoo in terms of strength, so the iron rod came out of his hand. Boom, boom, boom. Under the swing of skeleton Susan, the huge iron rod kept hitting the ground heavily, and the huge force set off bursts of smoke. Damn Hiruzen, what on earth are you doing? Danzo, who was avoiding Kei's attack, was almost touched by the iron rod, and a cold expression appeared on his face. Sooner or later, you all have to. Boom. Danzo, who hadn't even finished his sentence, was kicked by Kei, and his body began to fly backwards at high speed. At this time, Kei was filled with a layer of special energy, which was the increase brought about by opening the 3 doors. His physical skills will be greatly enhanced when enveloped by this energy. Swish. After kicking Danzo away, Kei kicked his feet to the ground, his whole body burst out, and launched another offensive towards Danzo. If you look carefully, you will find that there are confetti-like things floating on Danzo's body today. Danzo was a little helpless when he saw Kei rushing towards him again. Ever since he started fighting with Kei, he had never been injured. His arms, sternum, and even his head were kicked off several times by the opponent. This means that Danzo has an immortal body, otherwise another person would not be able to hold on long ago. Son of Matt Day, I should have recruited you into the route if I had known earlier. Danzo, who was thinking this way, felt it was a pity. The other side. Sorry, Hiruzen, I can't continue fighting with you for the time being. The iron rod that the ape demon transformed into murmured in his heart, and then with a bang, it turned into a puff of smoke and dissipated. Having been continuously wielded by Susan, he had already been severely injured by Shizu's eye power. If he continued, he would even be controlled by Shizu's Jinjutsu. In order to prevent that situation, the monkey demon could only forcibly lift the psychic spell. After the monkey demon left, the third generation's face became heavier. Without the monkey demon, his strength could not be fully exerted. After all, some powerful ninjutsu required the monkey demon to cooperate with him to release it. The third generation looked at Shizu with a heavy expression. Suddenly, his eyes swayed, and then a look of pain appeared on his face. At this time, the third generation felt that he was in a different space, and his arms and legs seemed to have been penetrated by some sharp weapon, and a severe pain came from his body. Magic, the Art of Shackles. Chapter 159. Sarutobi screams and breaks his arm. Ha ha, on. the field. The third generation's chest was rising and falling at this time, and he was breathing heavily. Beads of sweat covered his wrinkled face. You actually broke free so quickly, Shisu murmured in front of him. Just now he used a powerful illusion that only the Sharingan could unleash on the third generation but even so, it only trapped the third generation for a few seconds. The third generation looked up at Shisu, who was wrapped in a skeleton Susanoo, with a trace of fear flashing in his eyes. If Shisu had used that ninjutsu just now, he might have lost himself now. Roar. At this moment, a roar like a wild beast sounded. The third generation turned around and saw a huge dark red creature appearing in his sight. The whole body is surrounded by dark red energy, and behind it are 5 giant tails condensed by dark red energy. Not good. Sandai secretly thought in his heart, and a worried look appeared on his face. The dark red creature in front of him was Sarutobi Liming, who was close to fully transforming into a tailed beast. He was burning with anger as he had been crushed by Kakashi, and the Vulpix in his body seized the opportunity and released a large amount of tailed beast chakra, causing him to temporarily lose consciousness and start to go berserk. In the ninja world, some Jinchuriki often go berserk because they cannot control the tailed beasts in their bodies, but there are 2 situations in which such berserks occur. One is like the Sarutobi Liming in front of him. He is now temporarily unconscious due to his emotional instability and the influence of the tailed beast chakra. However, despite losing consciousness, he was still the one who dominated his body, but at this time, his mind was filled with killing. The second situation is like Gaara of Tsunagakure. Because Tsunagakure's sealing technique is relatively low end and its functions are not comprehensive enough, Tsunagakure's Jinchuriki cannot sleep. Because once Gaara falls asleep, the one-tailed Shukaku will seize his body and go berserk. The rampage at this time was caused by the tailed beast taking over the body. Sure enough, it was too reluctant at first. Danzo, who was not far away, also noticed this scene, and a trace of imperceptible disappointment flashed in his eyes. Even though he was cultivated with first-generation cells, since he was a child, in the end Sarutobi Liming is just the blood of an ordinary person. In some aspects, there is still a big gap compared with the Uzumaki clan or the Uchiha clan. It seems that just 1,000 hands is not enough, Danzo murmured in his heart, but the next moment a green figure appeared in front of him. It was Konoha's great whirlwind. K shouted low, his resolute face full of seriousness, and then he raised his foot and kicked Danzo. Damn it, doesn't this guy feel tired? Danzo cursed in his heart, and the next moment he was kicked by K and flew backwards again. Kakashi raised his head and looked at the completely unconscious Sarutobi Isuke in front of him, with only his exposed right eye slightly condensed. Looks like we need to take it a little more seriously, Kakashi murmured softly. Crack, crack. The next moment, violent thunder attribute chakra condensed on him, and then he rushed forward at high speed with a silver short blade in hand, targeting the unconscious Sarutobi Liming. Noisy. The blue electric arc climbed along the arm and reached the silver short blade. Thunder and lightning jumped. At this moment, Kakashi was like a thunder god, exuding a violent aura. Roar. Sarutobi Liming, who had lost consciousness, was not afraid at all. After roaring, he put his hands on the ground and lunged forward, charging towards Kakashi like a wild beast. Thunder slash. A low shout came from Kakashi's mouth, and the next moment dense thunder and lightning condensed on the blade. Holding the blade in both hands, Kakashi was like a man and a sword merging into one at this moment, and a lightning bolt burst out from the blade. Boom. The lightning blade tore through the air and continued to swing towards the dark red figure in front. Puff. The next moment, a stream of fresh blood splashed in the air, and then with a bang, a severed arm wrapped in dark red energy fell to the ground. The Sandaime and Danzo, who were not far away, were shocked when they saw this scene, and then without any hesitation, the two of them rushed towards Sarutobi Ikume at the same time. In fact, they don't have much affection for Sarutobi Ikume. Needless to say, Danzo, in this world, everyone is treated as a pawn by him, and even the third generation only cooperates temporarily. As for the third generation, although he may not care about the relationship between Sarutobi Yming and him, what he cares about is the future of the Sarutobi clan, and whether he can regain his previous rights. Whether these can be realized in the future depends on Sarutobi Yming. Call. Just as Sandai rushed over to rescue him, a huge bone fist hit him. It was Shizu, and he would not let the third generation pass like this. Under his control, Skeleton Susanoo continuously waved his two huge bone fists and attacked the third generation. Facing the attack, the third generation's pupils shrank, and then he exerted force with his right foot and moved his body to the left at high speed, avoiding the attack with his flexible body. Fire escape. Dragon Fire Bullet. The third generation who successfully dodged Skeleton Susanoo's attack let out a low cry, then opened his mouth and spit out a ball of crimson flames. The crimson flames condensed into a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 3 meters, and the fireball rushed towards Shizu in front of him at extremely high speed. Because of the short distance and the fact that the third generation's movements were too fast, Shizu, who had no time to dodge, could only bear the blow with his Skeleton Susanoo. Boom. The fireball hit Skeleton Susan hard. Although the fireball was very powerful, it was still blocked by Skeleton Susan. But at this time, the figure of the third generation has disappeared here. What? Sarutobi Yming, who had his arm cut off, temporarily regained consciousness, and he was seen covering his empty left shoulder with a painful expression. Perhaps because he possesses the chakra of multiple tailed beasts, Sarutobi Yming has gained extremely strong recovery ability. It can be seen that there is no blood flowing out of his left eye at this time. He didn't pay attention to the strangeness of Sarutobi Kazum. In Kakashi's eyes, if it weren't for the tailed beast sealed in his body, Sarutobi Kazum would have been a corpse lying on the ground now. Kakashi held a short blade, and a sharp light appeared on his masked face. Although he couldn't kill Sarutobi Yming, there was still no problem in destroying him. Earth escape, a great river of earth flow. At this moment, a loud shout came from behind him. It was the third generation. At this time, he quickly formed a seal with his hands and slapped the ground with one hand. In an instant, a powerful earth attribute chakra poured into the ground, and the ground became soft in an instant, and turned into a mud flow like a river in the next second. It's finally here, Kakashi murmured in his mouth, and there was a blow-up of electricity flashing under his feet, and his body stood firmly on the mud flow. Chapter 160. Danzo preparing to retreat. The Kingdom of Fire. Inside the damning mansion. At this time, the daimyo was looking at Tsunade sitting opposite him with a surprised expression. A trace of imperceptible contempt flashed in his eyes. In the daimyo's heart, he didn't pay much attention to ninjas and even the entire Konoha village. No matter how powerful Konoha village is, he is still the top leader of the Fire Country. Just now, Tsunade actually suggested that a team be drawn from Konoha village to protect him. However, the daimyo was dismissive of this because he had already made a decision in this regard, and that was to protect the 12 ninja. Although not all 12 warriors have gathered so far, several people have already joined. He is quite concerned about his own safety. What's more, how could the daimyo not see that Tsunade was protecting her in name, but actually had other intentions? So he smiled and declined Tsunade's offer. Don't bother Gode. Although the damning palace is not as powerful as Konoha village, it still has some power, so I won't bother you to worry about it. Really? Tsunade was not surprised that her proposal was rejected. Tsunade didn't respect the daimyo as much as the third generation. The so-called daimyo, Hokage, country, and village are just the way of managing the country proposed by his grandfather. The first Hokage. The purpose is just to allow the country to develop better. But if something hinders the development of the Fire Country, or if something needs to be given up for development, Tsunade will not show mercy. Times are developing, Grandpa. Maybe you weren't necessarily right at that time. Tsunade walked out of damning mansion and looked up at the blue sky. Let's go, Jiraiya. It's time to make a complete settlement with the teacher. Okay. A heavy male voice sounded from behind her. It was Jiraiya, and then the two of them flashed and left together. Swish, a figure flashed past, and the thin Sandai stood in front of Kakashi, while Sarutobi Kazum was blocked behind him. Looking at the third generation in front of him, a trace of determination flashed in Kakashi's eyes. At this time, Shisu also came to Kakashi's side. The skeleton Susanoo had been taken back by him, and his right eye also changed from the kaleidoscope back to the form of 3 Megatama. The pressure is not enough. Seeing Shisu like this, Kakashi murmured softly in his mouth. The reason why he let Zijutsu fight against the third generation just now was because he wanted to compete with Sarutobi Aiknui, who was also a Jinchuriki, but the result disappointed him. In his opinion, today's Sarutobi Yming is like a child holding a sharp weapon, but he doesn't know how to use it. As for the other hand, Naraku told him that if there was a chance, Shisu would feel some pressure, which might help him growth point, but now it seems that the pressure brought by the third generation to Shisu is not very strong. Forget it, let's deal with them as soon as possible. Hokage-sama and the others should be arriving soon. Kakashi secretly thought in his heart. Then he held the blade in both hands. A powerful force burst out from him, and his sharp eyes fell directly on the third generation. Boom. The next moment, Kakashi kicked off his feet and rushed forward. The short silver blade in his hand drew a silver line in the air and struck directly towards the third generation in front. The third generation looked heavy, and he felt a power in Kakashi that was not weaker than his own. Even Minato's disciples have grown to this point. He secretly thought in his heart, and then he held a kunai in each hand and assumed a fighting posture. The monkey demon returned to the psychic world. At this time, the third generation had lost his most advantageous weapon and his strength was somewhat damaged. Clang, clang, the silver short blade in Kakashi's hand collided violently with the kunai in the third generation's hand, and dazzling sparks flashed in the air. Danzo's face, who was being beaten by K not far away, became more and more gloomy. From the beginning, their side was all at a disadvantage, and he himself was completely suppressed by K. Not to mention Sarutobi Isai, he was easily crushed by Kakashi. As for the strongest third generation, they can only barely withstand Kakashi's attack now. If this continues, let alone dominating the ninja world and achieving immortality in the future, they might end up here today. Although the reincarnation of the earth has immortality and unlimited chakra, Danzo knows that the reincarnation of the earth still has a fatal weakness. That is, it is easy to be sealed, just like he is now. If Naraku is here now, he can be sealed directly with almost no effort. We must retreat as soon as possible. Danzo secretly thought in his heart. Shadow clone technique. Danzo formed a seal with his hands and let out a low drink. Boom, boom, boom. A dozen of his figures appeared on the field instantly, and then all of these figures launched an attack on K. Wind, escape, vacuum jade, wind, escape, beast wave palm. While the shadow clones were besieging K, Danzo's true form took the opportunity to rush towards the Sandaime and his companions. Boom, boom. K here was not afraid of the shadow clone's attack at all. With his body shining with green light, he dodged several attacks of wind escape ninjutsu. The next moment he kicked out quickly, killing both of them in an instant. Daoing's clone destroyed it. The shadow clone itself can only possess 20% of the strength of the original body. In addition, Danzo's current strength is already weak, so his shadow clone is even weaker. A dozen shadow clones only stopped K for a few seconds. However, this time also allowed Danzo to come to Sarutobi Yming's side. Without any hesitation, he put one hand on the other person's shoulder and formed a mark with the other hand. Reverse psychic technique. At this time, Danzo decided to take Sarutobi Yming and leave here first. Konoha and the others could not go back for the time being. Kakashi, who was fighting the third generation, noticed Danzo's movements, and without any hesitation, a block of electricity instantly burst out on him, and then he stepped back in a flash. Divine power. While retreating, Kakashi reached out and pulled up the forehead protector of his left eye. A dart-like pattern appeared in his left eye, and the next moment Danzo suddenly felt that the space around him began to rotate, and a strong suction force came from the vortex. The reverse channeling technique that was already activated was interrupted instantly. Spirituality and reverse channeling are actually a kind of space ninjutsu, but they are just a relatively low-level space ninjutsu. Obviously Kakashi's divine power is higher than the reverse channeling technique, so Danzo failed. What's the end of this ninjutsu? Chapter 161 The Missing Danzo and Sarutobi Irumi. On the field, Danzo looked down at the space vortex on his body, and a look of shock appeared in his sight. He looked up at Kakashi in front of him, and met the scarlet left eye. This eye, isn't it? A bold guess emerged in Danzo's mind, and then he gave up resistance, and allowed the space vortex to envelope his and Sarutobi's bodies. In the next moment, his and Sarutobi's bodies disappeared here. Ha. After doing this, Kakashi gasped for air. The divine power just now not only consumed a lot of his eye power, but also took most of the chakra out of his body. This was the first time Kakashi used Kami to transfer people, and it was 2 people at a time, so a sharp pain came from his left eye, and the chakra in his body flowed towards the left eye unconsciously. If it were before, he might have completely lost his fighting power due to lack of chakra, but now, it looks like we have to pay the rent in advance. Kakashi whispered in his mind. In his conscious space the second-tailed matter lay on the ground. A trace of hesitation flashed across the huge cat's face, but in the end, a little energy was separated from the body and integrated into Kakashi's body. Since the last battle between her and Kakashi in the consciousness space, the 2 parties reached some kind of agreement. The second tail needs to give her energy when Kakashi needs it, and Kakashi promises her that he will return her freedom one day in the future, and also improves her living environment. That's right, it's the living environment. At this time, you can see that the current consciousness space is not as dark, damp, and sewer-like environment as before. Instead, there was a dense jungle. The jungle was full of trees, full of green, and looked full of life. Even the iron gate blocking Oi's front turned into a huge fence made of green rattan. The place where Oi was lying down was a lush green grassland. Although tailed beasts have no gender distinction, Oi's personality is somewhat feminine. Even if she is imprisoned, she still has great demands for her living environment. Kakashi immediately agreed to this request. After all, it was his consciousness space, and it was not difficult for him to improve the environment. He just needed to think about it in his mind and consume some mental energy. Since then, he and Oi briefly reached cooperation, but at this time, Minato was still full of resentment towards Kakashi. After all, Yukito's death was also related to Kakashi. On the field, Kakashi's body trembled violently, and the chakra in his body that was nearly dry suddenly became full. This feels really good, Naraku, Kakashi murmured in his heart. Now he finally felt Naraku's feeling of not having to worry about not having enough chakra. Next, you're the only one left, Sandaime-sama. Kakashi raised his head and looked at the 3rd generation in front of him, a sharp light flashing in his sharp eyes. Just as Kakashi was about to launch an offensive against the 3rd generation, 2 familiar figures appeared in his sight. One person is tall and has long white messy hair, while the other person is wearing a dark green coat and has light golden hair that looks particularly beautiful in the sun. These 2 people were Tsunade and Jiraiya, who came from Damning Mansion. After seeing that Sandaime was the only one on the field, a flash of surprise flashed in their eyes, but they quickly calmed down. Tsunade didn't care what happened to Danzo, Sarutobi Ikiming, and Vulpix. The only person Tsunade and Jiraiya really care about is the 3rd generation. After briefly greeting Kakashi and the others, Tsunade turned to look at the 3rd generation in front of her. After feeling the familiar aura fluctuations on the other party's body, Tsunade's expression changed drastically, and a scowl appeared on her handsome face. Haha, even you have been transplanted with that kind of thing, Tsunade said with a sneer on her face when facing the 3rd generation. After the 3rd generation did such a thing, the teacher-student relationship between them ended here. Not to mention anything else, it was impossible for Tsunade to forgive the 3rd generation of 1st generation cells transplanted into his body. Facing the current Tsunade and Jiraiya, the current 3rd generation also felt a sense of guilt in his heart, but it only lasted for a moment. Until now, both sides had nothing to say. After Tsunade and Jiraiya arrived here, the place instantly became silent. At this moment, Kakashi frowned slightly. He could no longer feel the breath of Danzo and Sarutobi. The black dart pattern in his left eye rotated rapidly, and a bloody tear flowed from Kakashi's left eye. At this time, Kakashi was trying to communicate with the Kami space, and he wanted to teleport Danzo and Sarutobi Yiming out. The power of the eyes spread out very quickly, and until the end, Kakashi did not feel the breath of Sarutobi Iku and Danzo in the Kamu space. Kakashi frowned. This was the first time he had seen this happen. He has experimented in the past that anything he teleports into the divine space can be taken out in a short time, but the things may disappear over time. Jiraiya-sama. Kakashi shouted forward, then whispered a few words in his ear. He reported the disappearance of Danzo and the others to Jiraiya. After all, it was a very important matter. After listening to Kakashi's report, Jiraiya nodded lightly, pointing knew that Danzo would not be solved so easily, and the space-time ninjutsu was extremely magical. Who knew where Danzo and the others were teleported to? In a village near the Land of Fire. This village seems to have been abandoned for a long time, and all the buildings around it are abandoned. The ground here is devastated, and even after several years, it can still be seen that there seem to be some traces of fighting here. What has war brought to mankind? A figure appeared in the originally silent village. He was wearing a yellow robe and a purple belt. He had a pair of narrow eyes on a pale face. A cold aura came from the pale golden pupils. The person who came was none other than Orochimaru, one of the three ninjas. At this time, he was holding something similar to a map. After comparing it in many places, Orochimaru finally stopped in front of a rockery. This is it. Orochimaru murmured softly, stretched out his tongue, and licked his lips. A hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. Then he waved with one hand. Hiss, hiss, hiss. More than a dozen long snakes spit out letters and began to wander around the rockery, and some of the long snakes had light blue chakra emerging from their bodies. Boom, boom. The long snake wrapped in chakra broke through the rocks and dived into the rockery. Chapter 162 Konoha, I will definitely come back. Click, click. As the long snakes wormed their way into the rockery, the sound of breaking stones continued to be heard, and finally the entire rockery collapsed to the ground with a bang. Hiss, hiss. At this moment, a small snake emerged from the gravel and spat out a message at Orochimaru's footsteps, as if conveying some information to Orochimaru. It's right here underground. The corners of Orochimaru's mouth raised slightly, revealing a cold smile, and then he raised his hands and began to form seals quickly. Wind. Escape. A big breakthrough. After the seal was completed, Orochimaru let out a low drink, opened his mouth and spit out a violent gust of wind. The invisible strong wind roared past, uprooting the gravel and the rockery in front of him, and then a deep pit appeared in front of Orochimaru. In the deep pit, there was a huge box made of steel, and there was a rusty lock on the iron box. Swish. Orochimaru appeared next to the iron box in a flash. Blue chakra emerged on his hand. The next moment he opened the iron box with his hands. As for the lock, which may have been in disrepair, it was broken at this time. Became two halves. Hiss. After Orochimaru saw the contents of the iron box clearly, his pale golden pupils shrank slightly. It was a body wrapped in white bandages, and the white bandages were covered with black spells. Then Orochimaru reached out and tore off the bandages covered with black spells, and an elderly looking corpse appeared in front of him. At this time, the corpse had its eyes closed and looked very peaceful. Is this appearance really yours? With a soft murmur, Orochimaru stretched out his slender fingers and peeled off the corpse's eyelids. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and then Orochimaru took out a scroll and put the body into the scroll. Orochimaru, who exerted some force on his feet and easily jumped out of the pit with a scroll, left here directly. Then a group of long snakes appeared here. The long snakes kept squirming on the ground, and then directly filled the deep pit, in a hidden cave near Kirigakure village. Obito, who was wearing a tiger striped mask, looked forward with a scholar eye. There were two figures there. It was Danzo and Sarutobi Liming, but they looked a little embarrassed at this time. At this time, a large piece of Danzo's chest collapsed, and things like scraps of paper were flying around him. The next moment, the collapsed chest began to slowly recover. As for Sarutobi, his arm was cut off by Kakashi's knife. He seemed to have been hit. He lowered his head and covered the wound on his shoulder without saying a word. Looking at the two people in front of him, Obito's only exposed right eye flashed a sharp light. Just now, he was conducting some experiments in the Kamu space, but suddenly Danzo and Sarutobi Ikenem were teleported over without even thinking about it. Obito knew that it must be Kakashi who sent these two people here. Kakashi's Sharingan was given to Uchiha Obito before his death. Many people in Konoha village knew about this, so in order not to expose his identity, Obito decided to deal with these two people completely. Just when he was about to take action, a sneer suddenly appeared on the field, and then a figure shrouded by a giant pitcher plant appeared next to Obito. The black and white body under the pitcher plant makes people shudder. Elder Danzo, it's been a long time, Zetsu said to Danzo with a smile on his face. Danzo's face was gloomy at this. At this moment, he felt as if he had just emerged from the tiger's mouth and entered the wolf's den again. Keeping these two people might help us, and didn't you realize that Vulpix has been sealed in the body by that guy, and Danzo is already a dead man at this time, so he can't kill him. What difference does he make outside the cave? Absolute said to Zetsu, who had a gloomy expression on the side. Now, Konoha village is getting stronger and stronger, and Nagato and the others are not ready to implement the plan yet, so Danzo and the others can be our helpers for the time being. After all, he hates Konoha very much now. After hearing Zetsu's words, Obito's expression changed slightly under his mask, and finally he nodded. Just like Zetsu said, Sarutobi Ise, who became the six-tailed Jinchuriki, must not be killed until he pulls the six tails out of his body. And Danzo, who has already died once, does not matter whether he can be killed or not, the difference point. And now that Danzo hates Konoha so much, it would be good to use it as a sharp blade point. After negotiating with Zetsu, Obito used Kami to leave. Zetsu returned to the cave and had a friendly negotiation with Danzo. I hope Elder Danzo and I can cooperate happily, Zetsu said to Danzo in front of him with a smile on his face. Hopefully, Danzo had a wry smile on his face. He had no choice but to be controlled by others as he was not as strong as others. But what Zetsu said next made Danzo excited again. I heard that the 4th Kazakage of Sand Hidden Village has a good relationship with Elder Danzo. How about you go to the Kingdom of Wind for a while now? The Kingdom of Wind. It seems not bad, Danzo thought to himself. Originally, the next step in his plan was to secretly contact the Kingdom of Wind. They would use the power of the Kingdom of Wind to weaken Konoha's power, and then when the two countries were both in danger, he would take the opportunity to do something. Although the plan could not keep up with the changes, it was not too different from his vision after all, and Danzo could still accept it. Then he turned his head and glanced at Sarutobi Yiming beside him. A trace of obvious disappointment flashed across his face. What disappoints him is not the lack of strength of Sarutobi Ichimori, but his state of mind. It is obvious that the current Sarutobi Ichimori does not have the heart of a strong man. The border of the Fire Nation. Aha. Two figures were walking through a dense forest. The leader was a man wearing a green suit and a dark green vest. It was K. Behind him was Kakashi wearing a black mask. As for Tsunade, Jiraiya and Shizu, they set off back to the village. Kakashi and Gai originally wanted to return to the village, but Tsunade was worried that something would happen to the Karigakure village that had lost its tailed beast, so she asked him and Kakashi to go to the Karigakure village to find out the news. The two Kakashi were extremely fast and soon arrived at the border of the Kingdom of Fire. Without stopping, they crossed the border directly and continued towards the Kingdom of Water on the other side of the Fire Country border. A thin man with an old face walked out of the border with a depressed expression. Exactly 3 generations after looking back at the place where he dedicated his life, he left without looking back. Konoha, I will definitely come back. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163, The Test of Shigu Forest. A place far away from Konoha village. This is a lush jungle, with huge trees towering into the sky, each of which makes it impossible to see the top of the tree. It was evening at this time, the sun had just set, and the place was already plunged into darkness. Despair. There was a sound of footsteps in the originally silent forest, and a young boy could be seen holding a dark tang knife. What is strange is that the young man walking in the forest always closes his eyes tightly, just like a blind man, but even if he closes his eyes, he can walk freely through the woods. It seems that there is still a long way to go before Shigu Forest. A familiar voice sounded from the young man's mouth. This person was Naraku. In order to solve the common problem of the main Jekai Sharingan as soon as possible, and in order to further improve his strength, Naraku prepared to learn the celestial art of the Shigao Forest at the suggestion of Tsunade. I don't know if this counts as betraying the master, Naraku murmured with his eyes closed. After all, he had not even learned the magic of Myomu Mountain, so he went to learn the magic of Shigu Forest. But there is nothing that can be done about it. Although Myomushin's magic can also enhance part of his combat power, it cannot completely solve the problem of Sharingan, and the increase in combat power brought by Sharingan is also not small. So now Naraku is here because he did not sign a psychic contract with the Shigu Forest at this time. If he wanted to enter the Shigu Forest, he had to pass through this dense jungle before entering the Shigu Forest. However, Naraku has a feeling that he may be going through a test now, otherwise Tsunade should be able to take him directly to the Shigao Forest. Naraku remembered that, when Kushina had just woken up, in order to protect her safety, Naraku asked Toad Flame to take her to Myomu Mountain, and even Naruto was taken there later. So since Myomu Mountain can do it, then there is no reason why Shigan Forest can't do it, so Naraku guessed that this should be a test for him to verify whether he is qualified to learn immortal arts. Roar. Just as Naraku was thinking about this, a roar of a wild beast reached his ears. Looks like a big cat is coming, Naraku murmured softly, and he could see a black figure more than 2 meters tall appearing a dozen meters to his left. Although I couldn't see clearly because of the darkness, I could barely make out that it looked like a black tiger. Although Naraku couldn't see it with his eyes at this time, he had opened Kaguya's inner eye and could clearly sense the tiger's position. With the black tang sword across his chest point, he commissioned Kakashi to send it to the land of craftsmen to find someone to make this knife. Its material was made of a special black iron and the material of a decapitation sword point. This Tangdeo is not only extremely sharp, but it also retains the ability of the beheading sword to absorb blood and restore the blade. If there were levels of weapons, this sword would definitely be superior to the white fang in Kakashi's hand. But Naraku heard from Kakashi that this time he not only made this black tang sword, but also made a silver sword for himself. After all, although the white fang blade was very powerful, Kakashi always felt that it was not suitable for him. So while there was still a lot of material left in the decapitating sword, he took the opportunity to build one for himself. To this, Naraku just wanted to say, "Brother K, you really know how to take advantage." Roar. At this moment, the black tiger roared fiercely and then kicked the ground with 4 claws, bending slightly. The next moment, its body jumped high, and in the air, the black tiger's body fiercely moved towards Naraku's body. Position dropped. Naraku's face straightened at this. The light blue chakra gathered towards the blade, and the next moment he swung the blade fiercely upward. Kai. The black blade cut through the air, turning into a black blade and slashing towards the sky. At this time, the black tiger's body just landed on top of his head. Puff. A splash of fresh blood splashed out, and Naraku felt a little wet on his face, and suddenly he felt an extremely fishy smell. Boom. Boom. At this time, the black tiger had been split in half, and the bodies fell on Naraku's left and right sides. This is just an ordinary beast, and it does not pose any threat to Naraku today. Even if it is not for practicing sword skills, Naraku can scare it away with just a slight burst of energy. Naraku didn't pay too much attention to the smelly blood on his face. He just dealt with it briefly and continued on his way. He had encountered many such beasts along the way, and with Kaguya's inner eye open, he sensed that there were several existences exuding powerful aura deep in the jungle. Each of those auras was no weaker than Gamabunta. Naraku knew that those few breaths were the highlight of his first test. Holding the black blade in hand, Naraku continued to move forward, but he was not too anxious, because not long ago, he received a message from the shadow clone left in the village. Tsunade and the others have temporarily resolved the trouble with Danzo, and the 3rd generation will no longer appear in the village. Although Naraku still felt that this result was a bit regretful, If he had been present at that time, both Danzo and the third generation would have died. As for the Sarutobi Liming, who looks very similar to the third generation, no matter if he is a Jinchuriki or something now, just kill him. As for the tailed beast, if you want to pull the tailed beast out before killing him, if you don't want it, just kill it together anyway. The tailed beast is just an energy body, and there is no real death. Even if it dies, it will be resurrected again. It just takes some time. Shaking his head, Naraku no longer thinks about these things in his mind. As long as he leaves the wet bone forest, whether it is Danzo, the third generation and the others, Obito and the black Zetsu behind him, these threats will all be eliminated. Thinking of this, Naraku raised his feet and continued walking forward. Ouch, ouch. But before he had gone far, he heard the howling of a pack of wolves, and black wolves with cold eyes appeared in front of Naraku. After seeing Naraku, these black wolves all opened their mouths fearlessly, revealing 2 rows of ferocious teeth, and pounced towards Naraku. It seems that it is not easy to enter Shigu Forest. Naraku, who had his eyes closed, murmured softly, then he held a black tang sword, and the next moment blue thunder appeared on the blade. Crack. Crack. The roar of thunder and lightning could be heard endlessly. At the moment when the thunder and lightning appeared, the black wolves in front of Naraku seemed to have encountered natural enemies, and a look of fear appeared on each animal's face. Chapter 164. You are such a loser, bitch. At this time, the black wolves were covered in cold hair. Without thinking, they stopped their forward motion and turned around to run in the opposite direction. But it's too late. Kai. At this time, Naraku had finished swinging his sword, and a lightning sword shot out, slashing towards the wolves in front. There is a powerful force contained in the thunder and lightning sword light, and even the air is cut open wherever it passes. Boom. There was a loud noise, and the thunder and lightning sword light fell directly among the wolves. In an instant, with the wolves as the center, a violent thunder attribute energy exploded in all directions, and the ground, where it passed, was scorched black. And none of the black wolves were spared. They all fell to the ground with a howl. You could see light blue arcs of electricity flashing on the bodies of these black wolves. Thanks to Kakashi's help, Naraku's achievements in swordsmanship are not low now. In the entire Konoha village, he is only slightly worse than Kakashi. For Naraku, the path he wants to take is all round, whether it is ninja body or sword skills. He has dabbled in it. Although it seems that what he has learned is a bit complicated, Naraku is very clear that many enemies will appear in the future. Some of them are good at ninjutsu, and some are good at eye skills. So in order to deal with those enemies, Naraku will not miss any opportunity to become stronger. If he were just a regular ninja, he wouldn't be able to deal with the terrifying Otsutsume clan. After finishing all the black wolves, Naraku held the tang sword in his hand and moved forward again. Meanwhile, at the end of the jungle, this is a huge valley that looks a little dark. Perhaps because night has fallen, there is not enough light and visibility is not high. Uzumaki. Naraku, you are such an interesting child. I wonder if you can pass the test. The ninja world will not be peaceful for long. A huge slug sitting on a giant chair whispered softly in her mouth. She was the slug fairy, a figure from the same period as Toad Sennin of Mount Mayaboku. However, unlike Toad Immortal, there is only one slug in the entire wet bone forest, Slug Immortal. As for the slugs, summoned by Tsunade and all the slugs in the entire wet bone forest, they are just clones of Slug Immortal. Like her, the clone has the ability to split. What? It will probably take some time for that kid to get here. I'd better take a nap first. The Slug Immortal yawned, then lay down directly on the chair and fell asleep. The densely packed slugs around seemed to be used to this scene, and they were not surprised at all by the Slug Immortal who suddenly fell asleep. In the jungle, a violent aura emanated from Naraku. At this time, his body was covered with blue chakra, and it continued to explode outwards. Then Naraku kicked the ground with his feet and rushed forward at high speed. Until now, all he encountered in the jungle were normal beasts. At first, he might have thought it was new and even wanted to hone his sword skills, but now Naraku changed his mind. He realized that his idea just now was wrong. Ordinary beasts could not cause any harm to him. Even if he did not use chakra, he could easily suppress those beasts with physical skills alone. So Naraku decided not to waste time here anymore. Violent energy burst out from his body, and the beasts around him that wanted to get closer all fled in the opposite direction, as if they had encountered some wild beast. There was no longer any delay from the wild beasts, and Naraku started to rush on his way with all his strength. In a short while, he reached the depths of the jungle, but at this time, he stopped. Kaguya's eyes were wide open. With Naraku himself as the center, he would detect any energy fluctuations within a 3-kilometer radius within his range of perception. There was an extremely powerful aura not far ahead, and an extremely hot energy came from his body. After a slight hesitation, the black Tangdeo appeared in his hand. Naraku closed his eyes and continued to rush forward. At the same time, a violent breath burst out from his body. Since he decided to speed up, what Naraku had to do now was to push all the way. Roar. At this moment, a roar echoed throughout the world. Under this roar, the surrounding air fluctuated like a tide, and then Naraku felt that a powerful and hot energy appeared directly in front of him. You came so fast. Naraku murmured softly. Although he didn't know what species the beast in front of him was, this was not important information to Naraku. Vajra chain. Naraku shouted, and then a dazzling golden light flashed on his back. Wow. Wow. 7 golden chains protruded from Naraku's back. The next moment, the gold chains, as thick as an adult's arm, all protruded forward. The chains traveling at extremely fast speeds were like giant pythons pouncing on food. Naraku, who couldn't see with his eyes, might not know clearly. What he saw in front of him at this time was a giant dog whose body was flaming red, and red flames emanated from it from time to time. The giant dog's lantern-sized beast eyes looked towards Naraku in front of him. When he saw the golden chain, a trace of human fear appeared in the giant dog's eyes. It felt an unusually strong energy on the chain, and without any hesitation, it raised its head and roared toward the sky. Wang, wang, wang. A series of barking sounds came from its mouth. Naraku was slightly startled when he heard the sound. He didn't expect that the beast in front of him was actually a dog, but it didn't matter to him whatever it was, he just had to defeat it. Young dog, you are really useless. You are looking for rescuers before this battle even begins. At this moment, a mocking voice suddenly appeared on the field. Boom. Then the ground shook violently, and then a creature with sharp spikes on its back blocked the giant dog. If Naraku could see clearly at this time, he would find that the creature with spikes on its back is similar to a hedgehog, but it is much larger. Clang, clang, clang. Because this creature was blocking the front of the giant dog, all the thick chains hit the spikes on its back. Suddenly there was a clear sound of metal collision on the field. It actually blocked it. Naraku murmured softly, but there was no surprise on his face. Under his perception, he had already sensed the aura hidden under the ground. And you come out too. ZHI. ZHI. Naraku raised his right hand slightly, and then pointed sharply to the right. Crack. Crack. In an instant, light blue arcs of electricity appeared in the air. The next moment, these arcs turned into thunder arrows and rushed forward at great speed. Chapter 165. It seems that he can only be captured alive. ZHI. ZHI. The sound of thunder and lightning flashed from the air. Dozens of thunder and lightning ripped through the air and rushed forward at great speed. Although Naraku could not see with his eyes at this time, no creature could escape the observation of his Kaguya mind. At this time, he clearly sensed that in addition to the 2 huge creatures in front of him, there was also a creature with powerful chakra hidden in his right hand. Hiss. Suddenly, a chameleon with a green body and a height of more than 2 meters appeared on the field. Looking at the several thunder arrows rushing toward him at extremely fast speeds, a trace of shock flashed in chameleon's eyes. As a chameleon species, it has already perfected its color changing ability. After living in the Shigi Bone Forest for so many years, except for that man, only the slug immortal can easily see through its hiding place. With just one meeting, Chameleon realized that Naraku was not simple. The next moment, its figure flashed and disappeared again. Call out, call out, call out. At this moment, the thunder arrows tore through the air and landed in this area. After a violent shock in the air, the thunder arrows dissipated. Oh, he was actually avoided. Naraku murmured softly, feeling that his thunder arrow did not hit the target. However, you can't run away. Naraku's lips curled up slightly. Fire. escape, fire dog sprint. At this moment, a roar came, and then Naraku felt a hot energy rushing towards him at a very fast speed. It was the giant dog-like creature known as the Earth Dog. At this time, it was seen that its whole body was surrounded by red flames, and a scorching high temperature radiated from its body. Then it kicked off its feet and its whole body rushed forward. The huge impact caused the air in front to vibrate instantly. Naraku did not retreat in the face of the giant dog's impact. He clenched his hands into fists, and the dark blue chakra slowly flowed in his arms. The next moment, under Naraku's control, the dark blue chakra instantly turned into a fiery red. The next moment, when Naraku sensed that the giant dog was about to rush towards him, he punched fiercely. Boom. A loud noise was heard on the field, and the next moment, the giant dog flew backwards at extremely high speed. Red flames flew from his body in all directions. Boom. Until finally the huge body of the native dog fell to the ground, and the huge impact caused the ground to sink into a large piece. I'll go. So fierce. She looks a lot like that little girl Tsunade. The huge hedgehog-like creature standing next to the native dog murmured. It may not have noticed that Naraku frowned slightly after hearing these words, and it may not have known that, because of its words, the three of them, the native dog and the chameleon, had saved their lives. It seems we can only capture him alive. Earth escape. 1,000 piercings. At this moment, a low shout came from the field. It was the huge hedgehog, and blue chakra was seen flowing on its body. Boom. Boom. The ground trembled slightly, and then dozens of diamond-shaped spikes formed by earthy yellow energy rose from the ground. Call out. Call out. Call out. The next moment, there was a sound of piercing the air, and these spikes formed by earth yellow energy were seen rushing towards Naraku at extremely fast speeds. Naraku frowned slightly at this, and the next moment the 7 thick golden chains behind him moved. Wow. Hurrah. The chains made trembling sounds from time to time as they moved rapidly. The next moment, 7 golden chains appeared in front of Naraku at the same time. Then the chains visible to the naked eye newly began to intertwine with each other, and finally formed a huge golden shield to block his body. Boom. 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 At this moment, the formed golden shield trembled violently, and diamond-shaped spikes fell on the shield. Although the impact of the diamond-shaped spikes was strong, it was still blocked by the shield composed of chain sky. At this moment, there was a sound of breaking through the air around Naraku, and the air to his left fluctuated, and then a dagger with a cold light appeared. What was strange was that only the dagger was seen, but the person holding the dagger was not seen. The dagger pierced the air and was heading towards Naraku's arm at high speed. However, facing the dagger that was about to fall on him, Naraku was not afraid at all at this moment, and always maintained a relaxed look on his face. "You're the one I've been waiting for," Naruto secretly thought to himself, and saw that the dagger stabbing him at the next moment stayed in midair. Well, at the same time, a sound rang in Naraku's ears. At this time, you can see a huge chameleon more than 2 meters tall with a look of pain on its face, and a dark chain around its neck. At this time, Naraku's mastery of this ninjutsu has almost caught up with Kushina's before. Now he can summon all chains 8 at once. Black scythe binding, Naraku murmured, and then the chameleon, which was bound by the black chain, immediately stopped struggling. At this time, it could be seen that its body was covered with black spells. Boom. The incapacitated chameleon fell directly to the ground. I didn't expect that even Zyrolu was easily captured by him. The hedgehog-like creature in front murmured that its name was Old Hedgehog, and it was the first psychic beast to come to the Shigi Bone Forest. In fact, the Earth Dog and the Little Green were originally one of the many psychic beasts, but their tribes were exterminated at a certain period in the history of the 1,000 Years' War with nowhere to go. They settled on the outskirts of the Shigi Bone Forest. Of course, this was tacitly approved by the Slug Immortal. Even if it weren't for the Slug Immortal, their enemies would have wiped them out long ago. As for this time, they were only entrusted by Slug Immortal to test Naraku's true strength. Call out. Call out. Call out. At this moment, a sound broke through the air. It was Naraku. At this time, he also had a simple understanding of the strength of these 3 creatures. Although they were very strong, they were still far behind in points, so at this time, Naraku planned to finish everything in one go. 7 gold and 1 black. 8 thick chains moved at the same time, wrapping around the native dog and the old hedgehog respectively. Seeing this scene, there was a trace of fear in the eyes of the native dog. Naraku had punched it away just now, which had already cast a shadow on its psychology. Red flames burst out from its body, and it wanted to use the flames to block the attack of the golden chain. Earth dogs are creatures of the fire dog family, similar to the toads of Mount Myomu. They are both huge in size, and are extremely good at using fire attribute energy. Facing the native dog covered in red flames, Naraku didn't have a trace of panic on his face. He happens to be quite good at fire attributed energy. Chapter 166. Entering Shigu Forest. A bold guess. Fire, wind, thunder. Among the 5 series of chakras, these 3 attributes are the 3 that are good at attacking. The thunder element is violent, the fire element is explosive, and the wind element is sharp. Naraku happens to have these 3 chakra attributes. Although he usually likes to use the thunder type the most, it does not mean that he is not good at the fire attribute chakra point. In fact, Naraku is extremely proficient in, whether it is thunder escape, wind escape, or fire escape, but he prefers the thunder element point, whether it is a change in nature or form. He has already mastered these 3 lines of chakra point on the field, at the moment when the giant dog was enveloped in red flames. A hotter energy came from Naraku point. The blue chakra surrounding him, that was visible to the naked eye, instantly turned into a fiery red point. Then, under the control of Naraku, this high temperature energy began to slowly spread toward the Vajra chain point. The next moment, the chain that was originally glowing with golden light turned red instantly, as if it had been cooked, and a scorching high temperature came from the chain point. Then these chains covered with fire attribute energy were wrapped around the native dog and the old hedgehog at the same time. Wow. Hurrah. The chain passed through at high speed and landed on the native dog and the old hedgehog in the blink of an eye. A painful barking sound was heard, and a painful expression appeared on the face of the native dog. So hot. This is the truest thought deep in the earth dog's heart. As a member of the fire dog family, it is also extremely good at fire attribute energy. Moreover, its body has already developed some fire resistance due to long-term exposure to fire attribute energy. When ordinary flames fall on it, it feels similar to the feeling of a normal person basking in the sun. So native dogs rarely feel heat, but now it really feels an unbearable heat. Not only him, but also the old hedgehog beside him. At this time, it was also bound by 4 red chains that exuded scorching heat. A high temperature was slowly spreading towards its body. Compared with the earth dog whose body has fire resistance, the old hedgehog is in more pain at this time. You can see that the spikes on its back have turned a little red, almost. Naraku murmured in his mouth. With Kaguya's eyes open, he could clearly sense the state of the native dog and the old hedgehog. He felt that if he continued, he might really hurt them. Regarding these huge creatures, Naraku can sense that they don't have much malice towards him. They are here to attack him, just to test himself. Just when the old hedgehog and the native dog couldn't stand it anymore, Naraku took back the diamond chain. At the same time, the sealing technique that bound the chameleon on the ground was also released. Then he entered the wet bone forest under the leadership of the chameleon. This is a Shigao forest, Naraku murmured softly. Although he couldn't see it with his eyes, Naraku felt very dense energy around him, and he felt that the air around him was a little moist. Lord Naraku, you are here. At this moment, a somewhat familiar female voice came. A smile appeared on Naraku's face when he heard the sound. Polite slugs are much better than those poisonous snakes in Raichi Cave. Then he was led by the slug to a huge cave, where the slug immortal lived. The moment Naraku stepped into the cave, he felt a familiar and powerful energy wave. This is first generation cells, Naraku murmured in his mouth. He sensed many powerful breaths of life in the cave, and these breaths were very similar to the first generation cells in Danzo's body. No, it's not the first generation cells, but Naraku soon shook his head secretly. According to his perception, although the several breaths in the cave were very similar to the first generation cells, as Naraku sensed them more carefully, he found that these breaths were more powerful than the first generation cells. The reason why the first generation cells are powerful is not only because they can use wood escape ninjutsu after transplantation, but also because the first generation cells have strong vitality. After transplanting the first generation cells, they can basically heal themselves directly from ordinary injuries. But at this moment, Naraku sensed that the slug that had even brought him here was in the entire cave. The vitality in them is stronger and purer than the first generation cells, especially the aura in the middle of the cave. In Naraku's perception, even the strongest tailed beast, the Ninetales with nearly infinite chakra, is comparable to this aura in terms of energy. Just like Naraku himself, as a member of the Uzumaki clan, he has a very strong vitality, but in this cave, he felt like he was a frog at the bottom of a well point. Although he had never seen the Toad Immortal of Myomu Mountain and the White Snake Immortal of Raichi Cave, Naraku had an intuition point. No matter how powerful those two immortals are, they will still die in front of this slug immortal point after Naraku entered the cave. He confirmed a suspicion in his mind point, whether it's the slugs inside the cave or the slugs outside the cave. They are not just clones of the slug immortal point as a clone. Slug has very similar powers to slug immortal, and they can also split point. The slug that splits out from its clone may be relatively weak at first, but there is one thing that makes it more terrifying point, whether they are clones or clones that split from their clones. They can all practice alone point at this time. Naraku had a bold idea. If Slug Immortal recalled all her clones one day, what level of existence would she grow to? Will he become a being that surpasses Otsutsumu? Naraku whispered in his heart. From this moment on, he once again had a sense of awe for the three holy places in his heart. Even Myomu Mountain, which appears the most in the original work, still contains too many unknown secrets. Shaking his head, Naraku suppressed the thoughts in his mind for the time being. This was his first time meeting Slug Immortal, and he didn't want to leave a bad impression on him. After all, this time he came to Shigu Forest to ask for something from the other party. Can he master the magical skills of Shigu Forest, learn Muji healing, and make his eyes bright again? These are all decided by Immortal Slug in front of you. Following the little slug in front of him, Naraku walked forward cautiously step by step. Sometimes he would even stop and wait for a while before continuing. This is because there are slugs everywhere in this cave. If Naraku could see them at this time, his scalp would feel numb. Thick slugs were all over the cave, and even the short stretch of road under his feet was also occupied by dense slugs. Chapter 167. Here comes an interesting little guy. Call, listening to the deafening snoring in front of him, a helpless expression flashed across Naraku's face. Most of a day has passed since he entered the cave. During this period, Naraku did nothing but stood here and listened to the slug immortal snoring for a long time. Do these immortals all like to take a good nap? Naraku complained secretly in his heart. In an extremely blurry space, an unusually thick white mist floats around. 3 huge figures could be vaguely seen in the white mist. It looked like a huge toad and a huge slug with 2 tentacles on its head. As for the last one, his figure was completely hidden by the white mist. There is not much time left before that clan attacks. At this moment, a heavy voice came from the white mist. After a long silence, a gentle female voice came, and the huge slug opened its mouth slightly and spoke. We have made many preparations for that clan, but after all, that clan's strength is too terrifying. We have reached a critical period and we must not let that clan destroy everything. Although the tone was gentle, it revealed a strong determination. I hope we can still win this time. The heavy voice sounded again. Then this space fell into calm again. After a long time, the gentle female voice sounded again. I have an interesting little guy here. Sorry, I have to go back and have a look first. After that, the huge slug disappeared. Interesting little guy. I wonder when my son of prophecy will come to see me. The heavy sound sounded again, and then the huge toad disappeared. Only the figure covered by the white mist remained there. Interesting little guy. There seems to be one here too. Konoha village. The early morning sunlight shines through the window, making the whole room look less gloomy. Tsunade, who was sitting at her desk, reached out and rubbed her stiff shoulders. At this moment, she seemed to feel something, and she turned her head sharply and looked back, her sharp eyes full of warning. Forehead. Hiding in the dark, Jiraiya, who had just stretched out one foot, saw this and silently retracted the foot he took out. What a stubborn guy, Tsunade complained, but looking at the tall figure, there was still a trace of imperceptible joy in her eyes. But that joy was soon attracted by the mountains of documents on his desk. Tsunade was a little helpless, but there was nothing she could do. It was her duty to stay in her position, manage her affairs, and handle all affairs of the Leaf Village Point. After driving the Sandai and Danzo out of the village, the remaining Nomura clan and Sarutobi clan in the village are also problems that need to be solved as soon as possible. As for how to resettle the people of these two clans, it is also a very headache for Tsunade Point. If it were just a family of the Shimura clan, it would be okay, because their clan leader Shimura Danzo has done all kinds of bad things in Konoha village, and no one will say anything, even if they are driven out of the village point. But now the Shimura clan is tied to the same front as the Sarutobi clan point, unlike the Shimura clan. The Sarutobi clan is still the glorious family of Konoha village, and is a family that has made great contributions to the village point. What's more, the current leader of the Sarutobi clan, Sarutobi Hiruzen, also known as the Third Hokage, still holds the title of the Third Hokage point. Perhaps it was to allow the third generation to keep the evening festival, or perhaps to stabilize the hearts of the villagers. Tsunade did not spread the news that the third generation had betrayed the village point. What she claimed to the outside world was that the third generation was old and living in seclusion. The villagers did not suspect anything about this, because the third generation also used this reason to leave the village for almost 3 years. Boom. Boom. At this moment, there was a knock on the door outside the office, and Suna spoke without raising his head. "Please come in." She already sensed who the person outside was. It is our Konoha military advisor, Nara Shikaku, with his brows slightly furrowed and a scroll in his hand. "Lord Hokage." After entering the office, Shikaku bowed slightly and said. At this time, Shikaku felt a little lucky in his heart. He was glad that the 5th generation Hokage he supported had defeated the extremely power-minded 3rd generation. Regarding the 3rd generation, although he did not suppress the pig, deer, and saucer families during his reign, Liu Jiu always remained wary of him. Especially in some decisions about the village, he would express some opinions, unless the 3rd generation asked him personally. At other times, he would remain silent, because they are afraid of arousing the fear of the 3rd generation. The Nara clan is inherently intelligent. Over the years, almost nothing big or small that happened in Konoha village has been hidden from them. Although there are some things that they can't stand, but their power is limited, and they can only choose to wait for the opportunity. In fact, there are many families in Konoha who think the same as the Nara clan. Otherwise, when Orochimaru launched the plan to collapse Konoha in the original work, several people in Konoha village stood up to help. The 3rd generation, even his own apprentice, Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas, might have chosen to watch. "Shikaku, what's going on so early in the office?" Tsunade raised her head and said after hearing Shikaku's voice. "It's about the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan," Shikaku said in a deep voice. As he spoke, he raised his hands and handed the scroll in his hand to Tsunade. A gleam flashed in Tsunade's eyes when she heard this, and then she reached out to take the scroll and opened it directly in front of Shikaku. "Relocate clan." After reading the contents of the scroll, Tsunade frowned slightly, and then she handed the scroll to Shikaku again, motioning for him to read it too. Shikaku took it with both hands. Like Tsunade, he had a surprised expression on his face after reading the contents on the scroll. This scroll was personally delivered to him by 2 representatives of the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan, wanting him to show it to Tsunade for inspection. Shikaku didn't know what was on it until Tsunade opened it. The content on the scroll was very brief, even just a few sentences. It probably meant that the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan wanted to relocate, and asked Tsunade to agree to this, because the 2 clans had contributed to Konoha Point. If the 2 clans were really just relocating their clans, Tsunade would definitely agree, but it was obvious that their purpose was more than that. Just yesterday, Tsunade confirmed something from Naraku's shadow clone left in the land of the Senju clan. That is to say, Danzo and Sarutobi Yiming are definitely not dead, and they are very likely to be united with the masked man who calls himself Madara. Chapter 168. The clan moved, and the daimyo noticed the abnormality. Inside the Hokage's office, At this time, Tsunade was thinking carefully about whether to agree to the relocation of the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan. In fact, Tsunade knew very well that, if she agreed to move their clan, it would be tantamount to raising a tiger. It can be said that, as long as the third generation is still alive, the Sarutobi family will never give up their inner ambitions, and their family's desire for power will never weaken. As for the Shimura clan, after the dead Danzo reappeared, they also rekindled their hopes. They also wanted to one day become a wealthy family like Uchiha and Hinata. But this is just fantasy after all. Swish. Just when Tsunade was still struggling, a tall figure appeared behind her. It was Jiraiya, but at this time, his face was heavy, and he was holding a small scroll in his hand. This is. Tsunade frowned slightly, reached out and took the scroll handed over by Jiraiya, and then opened it directly. Nearly half of the population of the Shimura clan and the Sarutobi clan suddenly disappeared without a trace. This is exactly what is written on the scroll. The action is really fast. You are asking me for instructions on this matter openly, but you have already begun to take action behind the scenes. Tsunade murmured softly, and then said to Shikaku in front of her, I agree to their clan relocation. In fact, judging from the current situation, regardless of whether Tsunade agrees or not, the two clans will transfer their clansmen out privately. Unless Tsunade is determined to kill these two clans, she won't be able to stop them. After Tsunade agreed to their clan relocation, only 2 days later, the Sarutobi clan, which was at its peak, completely disappeared from the Leaf Village. This result made many people sigh, but it was also within their expectations. Just like when the second generation passed the position of Hokage to the third generation, the entire Senju clan completely disappeared almost overnight, leaving only Tsunade and her younger brother Senju Noaki. Now, only Tsunade is left. Compared to the Senju clan, the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan were lucky. At least they met a Hokage who was not so ruthless. After the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan moved out of Konoha village, the two clans first found a remote place to settle down in the Land of Fire. However, as time went by, some people discovered that there were fewer and fewer people from their two tribes. In the end, no one from these two tribes could even be found in the entire Fire Country. Kingdom of Fire. Damning Mansion. Lord Daimyo, please agree to my request. I'm no longer qualified to be your guard. A very young looking ninja was kneeling on one knee, lowering his head deeply, his tone filled with a hint of shame. If there was anyone in the entire Sarutobi clan who didn't want to move, then the man kneeling in front of him would definitely be the first to stand up. He is the third generation's youngest son, Sarutobi Asuma. He is now the bodyguard of the Daimyo of the Land of Fire, and one of the 12 guardian ninjas at this time. The Daimyo sitting in the main seat looked at Asuma below with complicated eyes. A complex look grew in his eyes. Asuma chose to resign from the Daimyo precisely because the Sarutobi clan moved out of Konoha. He believed that the Sarutobi clan who betrayed Konoha was no longer qualified to serve the Daimyo. Yes, in Asuma's eyes, the move of the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan was betrayal. Asuma, after a long time, the Daimyo spoke. You must remember your current identity. You are one of the 12 guardian ninjas of the Land of Fire. No matter what the Sarutobi clan has done, in my eyes you are the most qualified guardian ninja. Furthermore, even if the Sarutobi clan moved out of Konoha village, they are still my subjects of the Fire Country. After much hesitation, the Daimyo still stayed with Asuma. He also had his own thoughts in his heart. For a Daimyo in a high position, there must be something going on in the sudden relocation of the Sarutobi clan. He had been in contact with Heroes and Sarutobi many times. Although the other party was respectful to him on the surface, this was because the Daimyo had mastered his weaknesses, that is greed for power. Since you are greedy for power, then I will give you power. No matter what others say, the Daimyo is the highest leader of the Fire Country, and he also has a certain say in the appointment and removal of the Hokage of Konoha village. It was precisely because the Daimyo had grasped this point that the third generation was so respectful to him, but this was also related to the Daimyo's understanding of propriety. After all, compared to Naruto, the Daimyo is still on the weaker side. After all, he did not control those powerful ninjas, which was why he wanted to establish the 12 guardian ninjas, in order to make himself more confident when facing Naruto. However, the daimyo was worried at this time. Although the 12 ninjas had recruited most of the ninjas, he knew that these forces were not enough. After thinking about some of the things Tsunade said to him 2 days ago, the daimyo knew that he had to do something. The west side of the Fire Kingdom, the country of Sichuan Point. The country of Sichuan is a small country located between the country of Fire and the country of Wind. It is sparsely populated, and the number of ninjas is very limited point because of the terrain. Basically every time a war breaks out between the country of Fire and the country of Wind, this place will become the first battlefield. But now that we are in a time of peace, the people of Sichuan country are quietly enjoying this hard-won peace. But today, a person with a special status came to the damning mansion in the quiet country of Sichuan Point. He is dressed in black, has a thin body, and has an old-looking face full of deep ravines. If there are people from the Leaf Village here, they will recognize at a glance that the person in front of them is their third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen Point, after making a complete decision with Tsunade and the others. The third generation secretly sneaked into Konoha to solve the problem between the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan, and then received a message from Danzo, and came here. The third generation was not surprised that Danzo chose to gather in the daimyo mansion in Kawano Kuni. The daimyo of the Konoha country, Totama, also has another name, Shimura Totama. This is a seed planted by Danzo more than 10 years ago. But now this seed has grown into a vigorous tree. Although it cannot protect it from rain, it can still provide shade. The third generation who came here soon saw Danzo and Sarutobi Yiming, whose arm was cut off by Kakashi. However, the third generation was a little surprised when he saw Sarutobi Ikume, because at this time his body was intact, and his chopped off arm had actually grown back, and he looked the same as before. This once again allowed the third generation to see the power of the first generation cells. Chapter 169 The Lamented Alyosha, a short-lived ally. In the daimyo mansion in the kingdom of Konoha, the third generation discussed with Danzo for a long time, and the atmosphere between the two became tit for tat. Danzo hid the story of the masked man and Zetsu from the third generation, only saying that they were going to the kingdom of Wind to develop. The third generation was opposed to this. He wanted to continue to stay in the land of Fire and develop, and he had sent people to contact the daimyo secretly, hoping to use the daimyo's help to directly remove Tsunade from the position of Hokage. Then he retake the position. Idiot. Danzo shouted mercilessly at the Sandaime in front of him. Although nothing could be seen in the eyes of the Tensei, his face was full of disdain. He looked with some disappointment at the teammates or competitors he had been with for most of his life. Facing today's third generation, Danzo really can't figure out where he lost back then. He didn't want to judge Sandai's childish ideas at all. What a great name. In the face of absolute strength, he is nothing. The top leader of the Fire Country is only on the surface. Counting the past generations of Hokage, only the 3 generations in front of me have such respect for the daimyo. Needless to say about the first generation, he founded the Fire Country, and he proposed the idea of one country, one village. The daimyo of his generation were nothing in front of the first generation. Even in the first generation, the daimyo could be deposed directly. The situation was similar when the second generation was in power. With the second generation's methods, all major families in Konoha were suppressed by him, let alone a big name. But by the third generation, things have completely changed. Internally, the village cannot maintain harmony, and externally, certain decisions are restricted by the daimyo. Maybe the third generation at that time also had something to hide, but at this time, he actually thought that Tsunade would be manipulated by the daimyo like him. That would be ridiculous. He removed Koharu and Mitokaden from their elder positions, and firmly held the younger generation of Konoha such as Naraku, Uzumaki, Kakashi, and Uchiha in his hands. This series of events is enough to show that the 5th Hokage and Senju Tsunade have great ambitions in their hearts. Looking at the third generation in front of him, Danzo felt in his heart that his opponent for many years had really failed. But failure is failure. The current third generation still has Kage level strength. Before Sarutobi Yimei grew up, he was the strongest combat power on their side, so Danzo will not give up on him in a short time. In the end, after Danzo's prompting and his threat of Sarutobi Kazumi, the 3 generations finally agreed to their plan. to develop in the Kingdom of Wind Point. However, although he agreed on the surface, privately the third generation still sent someone to contact the daimyo of the Fire Country and expressed his thoughts. However, the result was unsatisfactory. Since then, the third generation has completely given up the idea of returning to Konoha and continuing to be Hokage. He began to focus on pursuing a career with Danzo. 3 days later, Danzo, Sarutobi Liming, and the three of them entered the Kingdom of Wind and came to Sunagakure village. Perhaps because he received Ju's message in advance, Alyosha was not surprised by the arrival of these three people. He secretly met with them. In fact, Rasa couldn't believe it at first. After receiving Zetsu's message, the third Hokage of Konoha village would actually come to join their Sunagakure. This was something he never expected. There are also the Six Tails Jinchuriki and Danzo, who has been resurrected from the dead. After hearing that these people were coming to Sunagakure, Alyosha felt extremely excited. Not to mention anything else, the third generation known as the Ninja Professor has extremely strong combat power. What Sunagakure lacks most now is this top-notch combat power, and there are all kinds of secret techniques in Konoha village. Alyosha had also heard about the sealed book. He made up his mind in his heart that when Sandai and the others came to Sunagakure, he would squeeze out all the value from them. But when he actually saw the third generation, he felt very sad. The dignified shadow of one village actually went so far as to defect to other villages. Looking at the history of the entire ninja world, I'm afraid that the three generations are the same. However, the current situation of the third generation also gave Alyosha warning. It seems that the village also needs to shuffle its cards, Alyosha secretly thought in her heart. Then he had a long conversation with Sandai and the others. Both parties paid some benefits to show their sincerity and briefly formed allies in a cave that looks a little dark. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The sounds of venomous snakes spitting out messages were heard. You can see that this cave is crawling with dense venomous snakes. These venomous snakes are colorful and come in various colors. These poisonous snakes kept climbing in the cave. Only the middle area of the entire cave is quiet, where there is a white snake with a white body and two legs. The white snake is 2 meters long, and its body does not look thick, just like a child's arm. Yet, white. Snake opened his mouth slightly, and a young sounding male voice came from his body. Then the white snake squirmed, raised its head, and looked towards the entrance of the cave. As the snake's head is raised, you can see a large piece of black snake skin on the white snake's abdomen, which is like an ugly birthmark to the snow white snake. Despair, despair. Suddenly a sound of footsteps came from the entrance of the cave. And then under white snake's gaze, a young man with white hair walked into the cave. The man was handsome, with a red cinnabar between his eyebrows. He was Kimimaro. It's the person Orochimaru sent here again. This guy really doesn't want to give up, White Snake said with a disdainful expression on his face. If immortality is really that easy to control, then there will be countless immortals in the world. White Snake secretly thought in his heart, a pair of snake eyes exuding endless coldness. He was already tired of Orochimaru in his heart. If it weren't for some of his research that could improve the strength of Raichi Cave, he might have driven Orochimaru out of Raichi Cave. Just because Orochimaru's own physique cannot accept the celestial arts of Ryuji Cave, he will send someone over every once in a while to try to see if he can master the celestial arts of Raichi Cave. Longdi Cave itself doesn't care about this aspect. After all, if someone really masters their Longdi Cave's magic, it will also be good for Longdi Cave. However, as Orochimaru sent more and more people, White Snake gradually became annoyed. Without exception, all the people Orochimaru found failed. They simply could not stand the magic of Raichi Cave. In so many years, only one person named Kaian Junengshu had successfully done it. At first, White Snake thought that someone would finally be able to carry forward the magic of Longdi Cave. Who knew that child actually died? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170. 3 things From that time on, White Snake's impression of Orochimaru was not very good. Even with the handsome Kimimaro in front of him, White Snake's attitude was not very good. Since you want to master the magic of Arlandi Cave, let me see if you are so lucky. White Snake murmured in his heart, and then under his control, the dense snakes began to move towards Kimimaro's surroundings. After a while, these snakes surrounded Kimimaro inside and out. If it were an ordinary person, facing such a large number of snakes at the same time, and all of them were venomous snakes, they would have been too frightened to move. But Kimimaro was destined to be different. A touch of determination appeared on his face. Without retreating, Kimimaro opened his arms and made an astonishing move. I saw him open his arms, kick his feet on the ground and jump suddenly. Then he closed his eyes and let his body fall into the group of snakes. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The snakes were excited, and they all opened their big mouths and bit Kimimaro. 1, 2, 3, and soon Kimimaro's body was covered with snakes of various colors. Until his body was completely submerged by the snakes, he did not resist at all. 4. Lord Orochimaru, the White Snake in the center, saw a hint of surprise in his eyes when he saw this scene. He had seen many brave people, but Kimimaro was the only one who could be so calm when facing a group of snakes. It's really interesting. Kimimaro's calm expression reminded White Snake of a boy from many years ago, but his reaction was completely opposite to Kimimaro's. In a huge cave, at this time, Naraku was sitting cross-legged in the center of the cave. Next to him was a huge slug. What? Naraku stretched out his hand and hit him. Haha. He didn't even know how long he had been guarding here. Why don't you take a nap first? Naraku thought to himself. It was late at night, and although Naraku's current physique could last for several days and nights even without sleeping, if he could really sleep, he wouldn't want to wait here. Just take a nap. With this thought in his mind, Naraku prepared to take a nap. Do you want to sleep, young man? Suddenly, a gentle female voice came into Naraku's ears, and at the same time Naraku felt that a strong aura had locked onto him. Even though he now has a strength that is not weaker than a shadow level powerhouse, Naraku still feels that he is very small in front of this aura. Finally woke up, Slug Immortal. Naraku secretly thought to himself. Then he stood up and bowed slightly in the direction of Slug Sage. Hello, Slug Sage. I'm Tsunade's younger brother, Uzumaki Naraku. A breeze blew by, lifting Naraku up as he was bowing. Uzumaki Naraku, I know that you have the blood of both the Uzumaki clan and the Uchiha clan. Young man, your future is limitless. Words of praise came from the mouth of the Slug Immortal. Naraku touched his nose in embarrassment, and then said, bloodline does not really determine the strength of a creature. If the Uzumaki clan is really strong enough, they will never be wiped out so easily. The same goes for the Uchiha clan. What really determines a person's strength is the heart. Having a strong heart is the most important thing, Naraku said with a serious face. Immortal Slug was slightly startled when he heard this, but then he was relieved. Having lived for countless years, she has seen too many people. Tell me why you came to Shigu Forest, Slug. Immortal said straightforwardly. I want to learn the magic of Shigilin. Naraku also said his purpose without going around the bush. I want to learn the magic of Shigilin, Slug. Sage was not surprised by this. In fact, she had already learned about Naraku's purpose from the clone, and Tsunade had personally told her about it. However, Immortal Slug did not agree to her directly. In fact, except for Tsunade, everyone who signs a contract with Shigilin needs to pay something. And Tsunade just inherited the coolness of her predecessors. I can teach you magic, but what will you do in return? Or what to trade for? The extremely realistic words came from Slug Immortal's mouth. Naraku was stunned for a moment when he heard these words, but he quickly reacted. Although Immortal Slug's words sound very realistic, this may be the reason why their wet bone forest can last for thousands of years. But at this time, Naraku was in trouble. He couldn't think of anything to exchange for the magic of Shigilin, nor could he think of how to repay them in the future. Naraku frowned slightly and began to think carefully in his mind. But after thinking about it, He found that in this ninja world, apart from having pretty good strength, he didn't master anything. No, strength. Suddenly Naraku seemed to have thought of something, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes the next moment. Something that sounded a bit arrogant came out of Naraku's mouth. I saw Naraku holding out 3 fingers towards the slug immortal in front of him. 3 things. No matter how far I grow in the future, I can do 3 things for Shigilin. Of course these 3 things can't hurt the people I care about. Naraku said word for word. If anyone else heard this here at this time, they might not be able to help but laugh, because this is Shigilin, one of the 3 holy places in the ninja world, and the person in front of him is Slug Sage. It is an existence that has lived in the ninja world for thousands of years. Naraku actually told such a person that he must do 3 things for Shigu Forest and exchange these 3 things for the opportunity to practice Shigu Forest magic. Perhaps ordinary people may think that Naraku is whimsical, make a deal, but a surprising scene appeared. At this time, the slug immortal agreed directly without thinking. Even the slug clones around him felt a little surprised at this time. Over the years, very few people have been able to get the opportunity to practice the immortal technique of Shigu Forest, but everyone has paid a huge price. Of course, Tsunade, who signed the contract with Shigilin, did not need to pay the price. She did not practice immortal arts purely due to her own reasons. Naraku was the first person to get the opportunity to practice the immortal technique in the Shigbone Forest by simply lying to White Wolf. Naraku expected that Slug Immortal would agree to his request, but he did not expect that the other party would agree so readily. While he was happy in his heart that he could practice immortal arts, he also felt that something was wrong. Young man, do you know the difference between the magic in Shigu Forest and the magic in Myomu Mountain? At this moment, Immortal Slug's words reached Naraku's ears again. Chapter 171, the first step in practicing immortality. In the wet bone forest, with his eyes closed, Naraku followed a small slug out of the cave. Then they came to a small cave one by one. Lord Naraku, please have a good rest here tonight. We will start training in celestial arts with you tomorrow. Slug's gentle and polite voice reached Naraku's ears. Naraku nodded slightly, and then light blue energy appeared on the surface of his body. The next moment, this energy filled the entire cave. The light blue energy is the chakra in Naraku's body. With the help of the induction of these chakras, Naraku can roughly confirm the structure of the cave. What? After the slug left the cave, Naraku raised his hands and stretched. Fortunately, I was prepared. Naraku murmured, then took out a scroll from his sleeve. Boom. The next moment, a burst of white smoke appeared in the cave, and some simple daily necessities appeared here. As expected, it's good to have acquaintances. Naraku murmured that these were all things Tsunade had notified him in advance, and asked him to prepare. Then Naraku tidied up briefly, and lay down in the cave, and fell asleep. Inside the huge cave, Uzumaki Naraku, you are really a strange person. I really look forward to where you will go, immortal. Slug murmured softly, then closed his eyes and rested. After a while, the sound of snoring sounded again. In the early morning, as the sun rises from the east, the sky gradually gets brighter. The originally dark space of the Shigibone forest seemed to have become a little brighter. Inside the cave, Naraku, who was sleeping soundly, seemed to sense something, and opened his eyes suddenly. Although the sight was blurry, Naraku still felt a breath approaching the cave. You're here so early. With a soft murmur, Naraku stood up, and walked outside the cave. Lord Naraku, you're awake, please. Follow me, training is about to begin. A small slug said to Naraku in front of him. Okay, Naraku nodded. He was a little surprised that the slug came to call him so early in the morning, but he didn't think much about it. After all, he was asking for help from the Shigu forest. It seems like there's no food left here. Naraku, who was thinking this, took out a soldier food pill from his pocket and stuffed it into his mouth. Although being lying one is bitter and tasteless, it is always better than being hungry. Naraku followed, stopping only when a huge open space appeared in front of them. Then under the guidance of Slug, Naraku stood in the middle of the open space. Then he noticed that dozens of familiar scents suddenly appeared around him. Naraku didn't panic. He knew that these were slugs on the field. Naraku was surrounded by nearly 100 slugs. Lord Naraku, are you ready? We are about to start. The slug's gentle voice came again. Naraku took a deep breath and nodded slightly. It's time to start. At this time, he was also a little nervous. After all, practicing magic involves great risks. Just like when practicing magic in Myomu Mountain, if you borrow toad oil, you may turn into stone like a toad. Practicing magic in Shigu Forest is equally dangerous. The first step in practicing the immortal technique of Shigu Forest is to improve one's physique. This improvement does not enhance the strength of one's own physique, but only makes one's physique more suitable for practicing the immortal technique of Shigu Forest Point, and this step is also the most dangerous step. Naraku learned from Tsunade that countless people did not even persist in this first step and were buried here. Therefore, Naraku did not dare to be careless at this time. Puff, puff. On the field, a small slug spit out a white substance similar to silk towards Naraku. Almost instantly, Naraku felt something sticky on his body, and his skin also felt a little itchy. Naraku didn't resist. He knew this was about to begin. Puff, puff, puff. At this moment, more and more slugs began to spit out the white substance towards Naraku. After a while, Naraku's entire body was completely wrapped in a silk-like substance. At this time, he looked like a huge silkworm chrysalis, about to emerge from the cocoon and become a butterfly. Puff, puff. After the white substance enveloped Naraku, these slugs still didn't stop and kept spitting out the silk-like substance from their mouths. By the end, Naraku's figure had completely disappeared, replaced by a white ball with a diameter of more than 3 meters appearing on the field. This is the first step in the practice of Shigilan immortal technique, using special substances produced by slugs to wrap Naraku and then begin to improve his physique. Because the white substance is highly corrosive and sticky, Naraku is very painful at this time. In the white ball, Naraku was frowning slightly at this time, with a look of uncontrollable pain on his face. He now understands why some people would die trying to improve their physique. This is not changing the physique, it is clearly destroying the body. The highly corrosive and sticky white substance enveloped his whole body, so Naraku felt burning pain all over his body. Even though he couldn't see it with his eyes, Naraku could still clearly feel that the skin all over his body had begun to slowly fester under the corrosion of the white substance. Although the white substance is very powerful, if Naraku can use chakra at this time, it will not pose a threat to him. But if he uses chakra, it means that this training will fail. Slug Immortal only gave him one chance to practice magic, so Naraku could only grit his teeth and persist. Fortunately, Naraku, who has the special physique of the Uzumaki clan, has a very strong recovery ability. In a short period of time, the corrosion of the white substance cannot cause harm to him. However, there will still be some pain, and Naraku has a look of pain on his face at this time. Just when Naraku was insisting, a woman wearing a green gown and long pale golden hair appeared here. It was Tsunade. Originally, she had no intention of coming here to check the situation. She had already chosen to believe Naraku in her heart. And she is well aware of the special features of the Uzumaki clan's physique. This kind of trial may be extremely dangerous to others, but for the Uzumaki clan with strong vitality, it will only suffer a little pain at most. But early this morning, Kushina came to her and insisted that she come over to check the situation. She couldn't stand Kushina's entanglement and finally gave in. So she appeared here at this time, at Tsunade-sama. After seeing Tsunade, all the slugs on the ground bowed to her and shouted. Chapter 172. The difference between celestial beings and magic. Naruto enrolls in school. In the wet bone forest. Looking at the huge bull made of white material in front of her, Tsunade frowned slightly, but relaxed at the next moment. Although the wet bone forest contains deep secrets, in the entire ninja world, who knows the best about the wet bone forest? But only Tsunade has stepped forward. Few people know that for thousands of years, Shigilan has always had a psychic contract with the Thousand Hands clan. Although not every generation of the Thousand Hands clan will sign a contract with it, basically every 2 generations someone will sign a psychic contract with Shigilan. Just like Tsunade's predecessor was the first generation. Tsunade, who knew the wet bone forest very well, also knew what the white substance in front of her was. In fact, this white substance is a great tonic, a substance somewhat similar to the first generation cells, and it can change the human body's constitution. It's just that few people can completely absorb this substance. However, Tsunade has an inexplicable trust in Naraku, and she firmly believes that Naraku will succeed. Come on, boy, the magic of Shigalin will definitely transform you, Tsunade murmured, then turned into a puff of smoke, and left here with a bang point. Although Tsunade herself has not mastered celestial arts, she is very familiar with celestial arts. Whether it is a celestial arts in Shigu Forest or Myomu Mountain, she is clear about them. The sage mode of Myomu Mountain is to concentrate natural energy, body energy, and spiritual energy together. Concentrating these three energies can be condensed into a new energy, which is Senjutsu Chakra. Myomushin Senjutsu Chakra can not only greatly enhance the power of ninja, body, illusion, and three techniques, but also greatly enhance one's own sensing ability. Unlike Myomu Mountain, the magic of Shigalin does not have abilities. Compared with the magic of Myomu Mountain, which focuses on improving attack methods, the magic of Shigalin focuses more on improving one's own potential. The magic of Shigalin can enhance the cell activity of the human body, allowing cells to divide at a rate much higher than that of ordinary people. Of course, if this is the case, this can only be regarded as a double-edged sword. After all, the number of cell divisions in a person's life is limited. When the number of cell divisions is up, death will beckon to you. The powerful aspect of Shigu Forest's magic is reflected in this point. The Shigu Forest's magic can greatly improve people's vitality, that is, it can increase the number of human cell divisions. This also perfectly avoids the disadvantages mentioned above. The first generation of Muji healing was the ability to master the Myoki Armor Immortal technique. Another point is that when using the wet bone forest magic, your own chakra amount will be enhanced several times. The reason why the first generation was named Chitanla was because he had mastered the immortal technique of Shigbone Forest Point. Although the magical arts of Myomu Mountain and the Shimagan Forest seemed to be very powerful, Tsunade believed in her heart that the magical arts of the Shimagan Forest were the most powerful because they had no real upper limit point. Moreover, according to the ability of Shigalin Immortal Technique, to increase the number of cell divisions, in theory, people who master this magic can extend their lifespan and even pursue immortality. But this is just a theory. It is acceptable if it extends lifespan, but it may not be realistic to achieve immortality point. In fact, whether it is Myomu Mountain or Shigalin, if you want to learn the magic of these two holy places, there is a common prerequisite, and that is a large amount of chakra point. If one does not have enough chakra, it will be easily swallowed by natural energy. In the land of the Thousand Hands clan, Kushina, who was anxiously waiting for news, suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. A burst of white smoke point, then Tsunade's figure emerged from the white mist. What's going on, sister? Is Naraku okay? Before Tsunade could speak, Kushina's worried voice came over. Tsunade smiled helplessly at this, then waved her hand and said, "It's okay. Naraku's training is going very well, and he will probably be back soon." "Really?" Kushina murmured, and her heart suddenly relaxed a lot. "Okay. Today is not the day for Naruto to report to the Ninja Academy. If you don't hurry up and get ready, it will be time soon." Looking at Kushina, who was still standing in front of her, Tsunade couldn't help but remind her, "Yoshi, Aunt Tsunade, you also know that today is the day for me to go to school. Do you want to come with us?" At this moment, a child's voice came from behind Tsunade. The young figure had dazzling blonde hair, blue pupils, and 6 long beards on his face. The person who came was none other than Naruto. "Okay, Naruto, Aunt Tsunade is the Hokage, but she is very busy. I don't have time to accompany you to school." Before Tsunade could reply, Kushina spoke first. Then she stepped forward and took Naruto's little hand to leave. Although Kushina, who now works at Konoha Hospital, has not participated in various events in the village, she has heard about some things, especially the relocation of the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan. She knew that Tsunade was also very busy nowadays. If she hadn't been too worried about Naraku, she wouldn't have pestered Tsunade to check it out today. "Aunt Tsunade is very busy," Naruto murmured softly, and his blue pupils dimmed a bit. But Naruto was Naruto after all, and he soon recovered again. "Yoshi, Aunt Tsunade must wait for me. After I become Hokage, you can take some time off and have a good rest." Naruto opened his mouth and smiled brightly. "You Little brat, it's still early. Tsunade reached out and rubbed her golden hair. A smile appeared on her face. Then Kushina took Naruto away from here. After briefly cleaning up, Kushina took Naruto with her left hand and Shiro with her right hand and walked out of the Senju clan together. Looking at the backs of these three people, Tsunade's vision was a little dazed for a moment. She thought of a happy scene that had appeared in the clan a few years ago. But then Tsunade shook her head. Don't Kushina know that the person invited to the opening ceremony of the Ninja Academy this year is me? Tsunade murmured in her mouth. Then she walked into the room, changed her outfit, and went out. And there was always a tall figure following behind her. Ninja Academy. Today is the annual opening ceremony of the Ninja Academy. On this day, there will be many new faces in the college, and there will also be some old faces leaving the college. There are many freshmen this year, and some of them are already highly anticipated even before they enter school. The son of the fourth Hokage, Uzumaki Naruto. The eldest lady of the Hyuga clan, Hyuga Hinata. The youngest son of the Uchiha clan leader, Uchiha Sasuke. There are also more famous ninja descendants from other families who all enrolled in school this year. Chapter 173 Kimimaro obtained the qualification to practice celestial arts. Inside Longdi Cave, in the huge, dark and humid cave, Whitesnake, who was closing his eyes to rest in the middle of the cave, suddenly opened his eyes, as if he sensed something. The next moment, he looked up to the deepest part of the cave. After feeling the familiar and powerful aura, the Whitesnake lowered its head respectfully. Just for a moment, a look of surprise appeared on Whitesnake's face, and then he turned to look at the group of snakes in front of the cave. Is this guy already here? A slightly delighted tone came from Whitesnake's mouth. It seems that Longdi Cave will be lively for a while, Whitesnake murmured, and then his body began to crawl forward. It seems that I want to congratulate you, Orochimaru. Whitesnake has sent news that it has been confirmed that the young man has the qualifications to practice immortal arts. A remote place in Raichi Cave. Wanshi, who has a huge purple body, said to Orochimaru, who was conducting some kind of experiment on the side. Haha, it has indeed succeeded. After hearing Wanshi's words, Orochimaru stuck out his tongue and licked his lips gently, with a smile on his face. Although he had extremely high confidence in Kimimaro, when he actually heard that he had obtained the qualification to practice Senjutsu, Orochimaru's long frozen state of mind once again fluctuated. His inability to practice immortal arts has always been a knot in his mind. For Orochimaru, who was known as a genius since childhood, this was also a setback, especially when he learned that Jiraiya had mastered Senjutsu. He couldn't accept it in his heart. But at this moment, he was relieved, because soon, he would be able to truly control the magic. A kind of madness flashed from Orochimaru's eyes. Shadow clone technique. Orochimaru formed a seal with one hand, and a slightly hoarse voice came from his mouth. Boom, boom. Two white clouds of smoke instantly appeared on the field. After the smoke cleared, two shadow clones appeared here. After leaving the clone here to wait for news, Orochimaru's body turned into a burst of white smoke with a bang. At the same time, there was a slightly desolate place near Sunagakure village. Orochimaru's figure suddenly appeared here. It seems that the test progress must be accelerated, Orochimaru murmured in his mouth, and then his body began to slowly dive into the ground. Although this stronghold has been discovered by Naraku and the others, the brave Orochimaru, who is highly skilled in art, did not choose to change the stronghold. He still chose to conduct some experiments here. Orochimaru, who walked into the underground laboratory, first checked on Jugo's condition. After confirming that his life was not in danger, he turned around and went to conduct his own experiments. A long experimental table is covered with a variety of experimental tools. But the most attractive thing is the 3 bottles filled with green liquid in the middle of the table. At this time, Orochimaru picked up one of the bottles and poured out the green liquid inside. A scarlet 3 Magatama Sharingan appeared in the bottle. Orochimaru then used a special instrument to remove the eye from the bottle and then poured it into a vial filled with red liquid. Then Orochimaru began to carefully observe the changes in the Sharingan. After a long time, looking at the Sharingan that remained unchanged, Orochimaru's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. Then he took out the Sharingan and replaced it in another bottle. The bottle is still filled with red liquid, but it looks a little thicker than the previous liquid. Click. Click. At this moment, several cracks suddenly appeared on the bottle. Without any hesitation, Orochimaru quickly turned the bottle upside down, letting the red liquid flow all over the floor. Then he picked up the scarlet Sharingan on the ground and put it back into a bottle filled with green liquid. A flash of excitement flashed from Orochimaru's eyes. The blood from the creatures cultivated with the first generation cells will indeed produce some changes in the Sharingan, Orochimaru murmured softly. Then he reached out and put the two bottles on the table into the scroll. Toot. Orochimaru opened his mouth and swallowed the scroll directly into his stomach. Then he continued the experiment without stopping. This time he poured out the green liquid in the last bottle and then took out the contents. Then he also put it into a bottle of red liquid. But this time you could clearly feel Orochimaru's nervousness, his pale golden pupils staring and blinking at the bottle filled with red liquid in front of him. Click. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the bottle. The moment the crack appeared, Orochimaru had already made a move. He directly penetrated the bottle with his fingers and took out the contents. At this time, Orochimaru was like a real madman. He couldn't help but laugh to the sky. Eternal life is about to begin. While Orochimaru was conducting secret experiments outside Tsunagakure village, Sarutobi Kazumi in Tsunagakure village also began his own special training. Looking at the third generation in black combat uniform in front of him, Sarutobi Yiming's face was solemn. In fact, Sarutobi Yiming was clear about the relationship between himself and the third generation, but neither he nor the third generation had ever taken the initiative to mention this relationship. But it is undeniable that he is indeed a member of the Sarutobi clan, and Sarutobi Yiming has accepted this from his heart. Otherwise he would not have used the word Sarutobi as his surname. Sandaime-sama, be careful. After whispering respectfully, Sarutobi Uzumaki rushed towards the third generation with a long sword in hand. Red flames rose from his hand, and then the flames began to spread towards the blade. The next moment, the entire long knife was covered with red flames. When the third generation opposite saw this scene, a trace of imperceptible disappointment flashed in his eyes. That's right, it's disappointing. Although the current Sarutobi Yiming looks young, not weak in strength, and can even be called a genius, but this is only compared to ordinary people. The faces of Naraku, Kakashi and others flashed through Sandai's mind one by one. During their years of rule, the three generations have seen too many dazzling new stars, especially the man with dazzling blonde hair. Even the third generation would not dare to deny his excellence. The fourth Hokage, Namake's Minato, is a man who truly conquers everyone with his own strength and personal charm. A man who rose from a commoner to the top of Konoha. His excellence is enough to overshadow everyone. Guy. At this moment, a sound broke through the air, and the Chimui Sarutobi was seen rushing towards the third generation with a long sword in hand. The long knife wrapped in red flames turned into a flaming blade and struck hard at the third generation. Chapter 174. The new elder of Sand Hidden Village. In a slightly hidden training ground in Tsunagakure village, looking at the fire blade coming towards him at high speed, there was no trace of panic on the third generation's slightly older face. The next moment, he exerted force with his right foot and turned his body to the left. He avoided Sarutobi Ikume's attack with just one turn. Boom. At the same time, the third generation kicked out fiercely, and light blue chakra wrapped around his legs. This kick directly kicked Sarutobi Yiming's body several meters away. Although the strength of Sarutobi Ikume disappointed the third generation, at this time he had no better choice but to train him carefully. After all, he put the future of the Sarutobi clan on him. It is worth mentioning that Sarutobi Kazumi, like himself, has a physique with 5 chakra attributes. It was because of this that the third generation did not give up on him completely. With the 5 attributes of chakra, coupled with Sarutobi Ikume's special physique and the 6 tails in his body, to a certain extent, his upper limit has exceeded his own. Although there is still a gap compared to a genius of Kakashi's level, with some means, Sarutobi Yiming's future achievements may not be lower than this, and the third generation officially began special training for Sarutobi Kazuma here. The other side, while the third generation was training Sarutobi Ikume, Danzo was not idle either at this time. He appeared in Feng Ying's office wearing a black robe. An unknown person also wants to be the elder of my Sunagakure village. Haha, he is really wishful thinking. An old man with white hair and a wrinkled face was pointing at Danzo, who was wearing a black robe, and said with an angry look on his face, point like Konoha village. Sunagakure village also has the position of elder and advisor. The old man in front of him is the current elder of Sand Hidden village. In addition to him, there are 2 elders in Sand Hidden village, but they have announced their retirement and have not handled government affairs for many years. Those 2 elders are Chiyo's mother-in-law and her brother. Faced with the old man's questioning, Danzo remained unmoved. He knew that someone else would come forward to resolve the matter. Humph. The facts did not surprise Danzo. Eluosha, who was sitting in the main seat, snorted coldly, his expressionless face full of majesty, and a violent momentum emanated from him. Elder. He who, do you have any opinions on my decision as Feng Ying? A cold and emotionless tone came from Eluosha's mouth. After hearing this voice, he whose old figure trembled slightly, and he looked at Eluosha on the main seat with complicated eyes. There was a trace of unwillingness in his eyes, but also more of a kind of confusion. He didn't understand what Eluosha was going to do now. When Rasa first became the Kazakage, both Chiyo and Abizo, who were also senior members of Sunagakure, chose to retire. He was the only one helping Rasa handle government affairs. At the same time, he also used some dirty methods in private to deal with things that were not conducive to the development of Sunagakure village. The element of suddenly, he who seemed to have thought of something, and a hint of enlightenment appeared in his eyes. Am I now a factor that is not conducive to the development of Sunagakure village? He who murmured in his heart, and finally, forced by Eluosha's tough tactics, he chose to compromise. Then a piece of news quickly spread throughout the entire Sunagakure village. The current elder of Sand Hidden village, Elder He who proposed to the 4th Kazakage to resign on the grounds of old age and frailty, requesting to step down as the elder after the 4th generation. Feng Ying tried his best to save the situation to no avail. He finally reluctantly agreed to Elder He who's request. Although everyone in Sand Hidden village was surprised by this news, it was within the acceptable range. After all, Elder He who was indeed quite old. Granny Chiyo and Ibizo, who were the same age as him, had retired many years ago. Another point is that the 4th generation Kazakage has fully grown up. Since he took office as Kazakage, both living conditions and the development of the village have been making rapid progress. There is no doubt that Rasa at this time was supported by most people in Sunagakure village. So much so that the next order he issued was accepted by everyone in Sunagakure. That is, there is a new elder in Sunagakure village. It is Shimura Danzo. However, Rasa was not a fool. He did not directly announce Shimura Danzo, but arranged a new identity for him. The identity of an undercover agent once sent out by Sunagakure village. Although everyone in Sunagakure village had doubts about this identity, they still chose to accept it. After all, they believed in their Kazakage-sama. It's impossible for their Kazakage to unite with outsiders to murder their village. Eluosha is very satisfied with this result. A secret room in the Kazakage building. At this time, Eluosha was carefully looking at the scroll in his hand. He could see that there were some human body patterns on the scroll, and the trajectory of chakra was marked on it. And there are some special marks. At the very end of the scroll, a familiar black swirl pattern appeared. After watching for a long time, Eluosha slowly closed the scroll. As expected of the Uzumaki clan's sealing technique, even if there is a training method, it is not something that ordinary people can successfully master. Eluosha murmured. That's right, the scroll in his hand records the sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan, the Bagua seal that can perfectly seal tailed beasts. This is what Eluosha specifically asked for from Sandai and the others. As for why he wanted the sealing technique of Bagua seal, it was naturally because of Gaara. Although he didn't have deep feelings for Gaara in his heart, it was a headache for him that Ichibi often went berserk. But if the sealing technique of sealing Ichibi is replaced by the sealing technique of Bagua seal, then I no longer have to worry about Ichibi going berserk. Another thing is that Gaara can sleep like a normal person. However, Alyosha also realized a problem at this time. Although the sealing technique of Bagua seal was powerful, it was also difficult to practice. With his own talent, it would be difficult to master it in a short time. As a Kazakage, he is busy with government affairs and has to take some time to train himself. If he is spending time to learn this sealing technique now, then he will not have much time to improve his strength. Should we ask them to help? Alyosha murmured softly in her mouth. A trace of hesitation flashed in her eyes. It should be no problem. Now Tsunagakure is the only escape route for these two old guys. I understand that they don't dare to mess around. After one day, Alyosha appeared in front of the third generation with a child of a certain age. This child has short dark red hair and a red word love carved on his forehead. He is Gaara. Looking at Gaara in front of him, the figure of a yellow-haired child appeared in his mind. Chapter 175 Physical Improvement completed. In the Sand-Hidden Village, Gossip. Seal. After the third generation quickly formed seals with his hands, he let out a low shout, and blue chakra visible to the naked eye rose in his right hand point. Then the third generation opened his fingers and pressed his right hand on the navel of the red-haired boy lying on the ground in front of him. The boy was Gaara. Puff. A puff of white smoke rose from his navel point. You can see a hint of panic in Gaara's eyes at this time, but out of fear of Rasa beside him, he did not make a sound. On the field, a breeze blew by, the white smoke was blown away, and a black swirl pattern appeared at Gaara's navel. The seal was successful. For sealing techniques, the Bagua seal is undoubtedly the top one. Just like Gaara at this time, he originally had a sealing technique on his body, but now the Bagua seal directly covers it. The moment the Bagua seal was completed, Gaara felt that the connection between himself and the one till in his body seemed to become less. Although Ichibi is still in his body, it seems to be a little further away from him, and he is not as accessible to him at any time as before. For a moment, Gaara felt a lot more relaxed in his heart. It's already successful. Alyosha, who had been watching from the side, murmured softly. Then he raised his hand and waved lightly, and a ball of gold sand disappeared from his eyes and slowly dived into the ground, along with a ball of yellow sand. That is another energy in Gaara's body. It is a power left to him by his mother Gaara. It is a power that will appear automatically when Gaara encounters danger. Gaara, I hope you will forgive me, Alyosha secretly thought in his heart, and then he took Gaara and left here. Jinchuriki, it's really. The third generation looked at the backs of the two people with complicated expressions, not knowing what they were thinking. Inside a huge mountain, there seems to be some dark light, and the air here is very humid. There is a white ball in a huge open space, which looks like a huge silkworm chrysalis, but at this time, the silkworm chrysalis is shrinking rapidly. A red-haired figure could be vaguely seen inside the chrysalis. It was Naraku. Compared with the pain at the beginning, Naraku looked like he was enjoying himself at this time, as if he was eating some top-notch delicacies relying on the special physique of the Uzumaki clan. Naraku at this time has completely adapted to the strong corrosiveness of the white substance. Just like now, although the white substance is still tightly attached to his body no longer feels pain. This shows that his physique has been successfully improved, which also means that Naraku is qualified to practice the immortal technique of the Shikibone Forest. In fact, now he could directly use brute force to tear apart the white substance in front of him, but Naraku did not choose to do that. Before his physical condition improved, the white substance was like a sharp weapon inserted into his body, causing him pain. But after his physical condition improved, the white substance has become a great tonic for his body. At this time, Naraku is absorbing these white substances into his body. 10 minutes later, Naraku's figure was completely revealed, and all the white matter that originally enveloped him had been absorbed into his body. At this time, Naraku could clearly feel that his physique was different from before. Just like now, he could clearly feel an abnormal energy filling the surroundings, or it could be said that the entire Shigao forest was filled with this energy. This kind of energy was something he couldn't sense before he improved his physique. At that time, he couldn't sense this kind of energy, even if he opened Kagura's mind eyes. Naraku guessed that this should be the natural energy used in practicing immortality. Master Naraku, Congratulations on successfully completing the first step. Please rest for a night. We will start the second step of training tomorrow. A small slug crawled on its body and appeared in front of Naraku. Okay. Naraku nodded slightly, mentally giving up the idea of absorbing natural energy now. Just like a person who buys a new car and always wants to test drive it immediately, Naraku also wanted to absorb some natural energy and give it a try, but in the end he remained rational. Natural energy is a powerful and mysterious energy. You cannot inhale it into your body without a certain understanding, otherwise you may destroy yourself accidentally. After returning to the cave where he lived before, Naraku lay down on a simple quilt to rest. He just learned from the slug that it took him 3 days to improve his physique this time. This made Naraku feel very sad. Originally, the environment in Shigibone Forest was not much different between day and night, except for some differences in light. And Naraku happened to be blind again, and because he was wrapped in white matter, he had long lost his perception of the outside world, so he didn't know how much time had passed in the outside world. In a hidden cave near Kirigakure, a figure shrouded in giant pitcher plants slowly emerged from the mountain. It was Zetsu. His body, one black and one white, looked very strange. Ju's eyes fell on the figure wearing a tiger striped mask in the center of the cave. It was Obito, Danzo, and the others have begun to unite with Sunagakure village. I'm afraid they will take action against Konoha before long. It looks like there will be a good show to watch soon, Ju said with a sneer on his face. But compared to how happy he was, Obito looked very calm at this time. With the two of them here, Sunagakure village cannot do anything to Konoha, Obito said slowly. After hearing this, Zetsu's expression froze, and he knew who Obito was talking about. Naraku Uzumaki and Kakashi Hatake, isn't that brat from the Uzumaki clan with the Sharingan blind already blind? Could it be that he can still use unlimited eye power like you? As for Kakashi, who masters the Flying Thunder God technique, although it is a bit tricky, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with him with your divine power. Don't you feel that you are no match for them? Ju looked at Obito with a rhetorical tone. Obito sneered at this. Whether it's Uzumaki Naraku who masters the Mangekyou Sharingan, or Kakashi who has learned the Flying Thunder God technique, even if the fourth Hokage reappears, they can't stop our plan. Inform Nagato and the others, and let Akatsuki start recruiting people. We are about to start preparing our plan. Obito's slightly hoarse voice came from inside the mask. It's time to get started, Ju murmured in his mouth, and then slowly sneaked into the mountain. Oh, by the way, someone in the Uchiha clan of Konoha seems to be looking for you, Zetsu said suddenly, half hiding half of his body. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.